Ms. Arias, please take the stand.
Please stand for the jury.
Counsel, approach again, please, for a moment. Please be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury. The defendant and all counsel, Mr. Martinez, you may continue with cross-examination.
Ma'am, yesterday you told us that after your experience or your time in Ehrenberg with Mr. Alexander that you felt like a prostitute, right?
Yes.
But you've made other statements with regard to your experiences in Ehrenberg, haven't you?
Yes.
Let's take a look at an exhibit, which is exhibit number, get that from the clerk. It's exhibit 490, which comes from your an excerpt from your conversation on May 10th of 2008 with Mr. Alexander. Let's listen to it and see if that's your voice, and then we'll move it in.
And it goes away quickly. The body absorbs it. Okay, well, you just keep spreading it on as you need it, and you keep slip sliding around. Remember the first time that you and I grinded at Ehrenberg, and we both, like, I ended up just coming, and you're like, whoa, I came. You came at the same time. I looked around, and there's just jizz, like, all over. It was so hot. We came together. That was so cool.
Ehrenberg.
Yeah. Think about that when you drive through there.
Oh, yeah. Always.
So do I.
Ma'am, that's your voice on there, right?
Yes.
And that's you and Mr. Alexander discussing what may have happened in Ehrenberg, correct?
Yes. What did happen?
Pardon?
What did happen?
What happened in Ehrenberg then, right?
Yes.
And you were talking in very fond tones about that experience in this clip that we just played, weren't you?
Yes.
And it was because it was fun, right?
Yes.
And it was something that you enjoyed, right?
Yes.
So when you tell us that you felt like a prostitute, it really does, it seems to be contradicted by what's on Exhibit 490, right?
Not if you understand why I said that.
Well, you do say that you enjoyed the visit to Ehrenberg, correct?
Yes.
You do enjoy the sex in Ehrenberg, correct?
Yes.
I move for the admission of Exhibit 490.
Objection.
490 is admitted.
And we also had another conversation involving Ehrenberg with people from 48 Hours, right?
Yes.
Let me have that marked as an exhibit. I move for the admission of Exhibit 491.
No additional objection, Your Honor.
491 is admitted.
Just tell me more about him. Like, what it was that was special about him?
He really was an amazing person to know. He was generous, one of the most generous people that I've ever encountered. There was one point where we were in Ehrenberg. I think that's Arizona. It's right on the border of Arizona or California. It's Ehrenberg. And we were driving up. We were hitting the freeway to go to a movie theater. And we stopped at the stop sign to get onto the freeway, and there was a lady there holding a sign. I don't remember if it said, "We'll work for food," or "Hungry," or "God bless," or something like that. But either way, he pulled over. We were in his BMW, rolled down the window, and he said, "Are you hungry?" And she said, "Yeah." And so with that, he turns around and we go to Wendy's and we get the triple decker that Wendy's sells and the biggie fries and the biggest drink that you could get. And we drove back and gave it to her, and she was really grateful. And she just went over and sat down away from the freeway and started eating and had dinner that night. So just little examples like that. That's just one of so many that people could tell you about his generosity. So there were so many attractive qualities about him. He was very kind. When I moved to Mesa originally, I downsized from a house to a room. And I didn't have a place to put my art. I didn't have a place to put my books and some of the things that were really precious to me. So he allowed me to use, he had so much storage available in his home, so he allowed me to use a lot of that storage to put things in his home, in his garage, or in his closet, in his office, and things like that. So and it wasn't even a question. He was just like, put it at my house, you know. It wasn't like he was doing me this big favor. It was just like, of course, you know, why think twice about it? So he never was showy about how generous he was. It just was like second nature to him.
Ma'am, when you first described this visit to Ehrenberg, you told us something that was a little bit different than what we heard right now, right?
Yes, according to the questions I was asked.
Well, yes or no?
Yes.
And you told us about going to Sizzler, right?
Yes.
You told us about him grabbing your rear end, right?
Yes.
You told us about the sexual encounters, right?
Yes.
You told us that really wasn't a romantic weekend at all.
No, it wasn't.
And in fact, the indication from you, from the witness stand, was that this was a pretty bad weekend all the way around, wasn't it?
No, I didn't say that.
Well, your indication was that all he wanted was sex, right?
It seemed that way.
Well, if it seemed that way, that was your belief, right?
Not at the time, but in retrospect, yes.
So, as you said here today, it looked like, or not looked like, all he wanted was sex, right?
Mostly.
Well,
Not all,
is it
but
yes or
mostly.
no?
Mostly.
And when you got there, according to you, that's the first thing that happened, right?
Yes.
And then you guys sat around at some point and started to look at TV, or watch TV, correct?
Yes.
And at some point you went out to dinner, right?
Yes.
And at another point you went to the movies, right?
Yes.
And you indicated that, well, to you, that was, the way you said it, it wasn't a very romantic weekend, right?
Not overly romantic. In fact, there wasn't really any romance that
Ma'am,
weekend.
I'm not asking you to embellish right now. I'm asking you whether or not you told us before that it was not a romantic weekend. That's what you said on direct, correct?
Yes.
And you didn't tell us about this circumstance where he stopped and he gave this woman this burger from Wendy's either, did you?
No.
It appears that there are two sides to what went on in Ehrenberg, doesn't it?
No.
Well, it appears that there's the side that we just heard from where you enjoyed the sex, right?
Yes.
A side where you and he were driving around, correct?
Yes.
And he helped some homeless person, right?
I think she was homeless.
Well, it's somebody that was standing there at the side of the road, right?
Yes.
And with some sort of sign. And it looks like this is based on what we heard from the previous excerpt. It looks like you were sort of reminiscing back on May 10th of 2008, reminiscing in a very positive fashion, right?
May 10, 2000? Oh, yes. I was.
That's the phone call that we just listened to prior to this.
Yes.
And it looked like you were reminiscing in a very positive fashion, right?
Yes.
Not the same picture that you presented previously with regard to the Ehrenberg meeting, correct?
I was asked about a different time frame.
Ma'am.
So then that would be correct.
So the answer is that is correct,
Yes.
right? One of the other things that was presented in this case was that it appeared that Mr. Alexander, from what you presented, was an individual that was totally into sex, correct?
Yes.
And that's when he was with you, correct?
Me and other girls.
Well, had you ever been in a bedroom with him and another girl,
Yes.
and the three of you had sex?
No.
So when you say that he had sex with other women, you really don't know if that's true or not, do you?
If he was telling me the truth, then it's true.
Well, ma'am, I'm not asking you what he told you. I'm asking from your personal experience in terms of the situations that you know about. You don't really know of any other circumstances where he had sex with anybody else, right?
I do know.
And you're talking because you were there and you were watching his penis go inside them. Is that what you're saying?
No.
You're just telling us that because of some conversations that you may have had with somebody else, correct?
Him.
Other people, right?
Just one person.
And as we know, people don't lie, do they?
That's not necessarily true.
Well, no, people don't lie. That's what you're telling us right now because you're saying that somebody told me, then it must be true.
I said if,
Ma'am, you're saying that it's based on what somebody told you, right?
based on what Travis told me, yes.
And people have a tendency to embellish things sometimes, don't they?
Yes.
Just like you in this case, correct?
Not on the stand, but in this case, yes.
Haven't you lied from the very start of this case until, according to you, you got on the witness stand?
No.
Well, you're saying that you're not lying here, that what you're telling us is the truth, right?
Yes.
But you are telling us that when you spoke with the detective, that wasn't true, correct? Whatever it is that you told him.
Well, some things were not true. Most things.
Most things were true? Is that what you're saying?
Some things were not true.
Did you lie to the detective, yes or no?
Yes.
And did you lie to him on 2 occasions?
More than 2, yes.
Well, I'm talking about 2 dates. Did you lie to him
Yes.
on 2 dates? And did you also lie to 48 hours?
Yes.
Did you lie to people in Utah?
Yes.
Did you lie to Daniel Freeman?
Yes, everyone.
Right, so you lied to a lot of people, but you're saying that just because you are sitting here in this courtroom, there has been, for lack of a better term, a conversion, and you're now telling the truth, right?
For lack of a better term, yes.
And the same thing with regard to whatever Mr. Alexander tells you, everything that he says, you believe, right?
Not necessarily.
Well, but you do believe the part about the sexual encounters, right?
Yes.
Did you ever talk to the women that were involved to confirm it?
No.
So you don't have any confirmation from these women as to whether or not it happened, right?
No.
And it appears, however, though, that this sexual interest that he had was directed towards you, wasn't it?
Some of it.
No, most of it. Or all of it. Wasn't it directed towards you?
Not all of it. Some of it. Most of it. I don't know. Maybe during the time we were together, most of it. I don't know.
Well, let's take a look at it and see what was said during May 10th of 2008 about that. And I'll ask you after I play it to see whether or not that is your voice and whether it is part of the previous stuff that we played.
We ask that it be moved to be admitted before it's published.
Then I'll move for the admission of Exhibit 492.
No objection.
492 is admitted.
Yeah, you are right, though, that in the bath. Oh, God, it's hot.
Oh, when we took a bath together?
Uh-huh.
That was surreal, like honestly. And I think, maybe the candlelight and the bubbles all had something to do with it, but you were amazing. You made me feel like a goddess. Like, I wasn't saying you were like worshiping me, but you made me feel like I was the most freaking beautiful woman on the whole planet. Like, I so felt like I was the goddess. And so, aside from all those warm, fuzzy feelings, but like, it was so sexy, and it was so hot, and oh, gosh.
Well, that wasn't hard to make you feel that way because you were freaking, you were hot. You are serious, but honey, I don't want to question you right now for that. You're touching yourself.
I am already.
I just started.
I wish those were my hands giving you a hand job.
Honey, so, you know, like, before I met you, I never jacked off. Once I started meeting, I don't know, once a month, once every 2 weeks. Like, since you've left, I jack off every day, sometimes 2-3 times a day.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Well, it's always just a fucking
Oh, please, love me right now. I wish you were here. If you were here, my grandparents were asleep, I'd let you right into my bedroom. We'd shut and lock the door, and we would just have a big fuck fest. We'd go at it all night.
That is your voice, right?
Yes.
And that's him telling you that in terms of his sexual activity, masturbation specifically, he didn't masturbate before he met you, right?
No, he didn't say that. He said he hardly ever did.
Well, ma'am, perhaps we should listen to it again so we can hear it. And you're saying that he's not saying, I don't know, before I met you, I never jacked off. I want you to take a listen to that.
Yeah, you are right, that into that.
Oh, when we took a bath together? That was surreal, like, honestly. And I think, I mean, maybe the candlelight and the bubbles all had something to do with it, but you were amazing. You made me feel like a goddess. Like, I wasn't saying you were, like, worshiping me, but you made me feel like I was the most freaking beautiful woman on the whole planet. Like, I so felt like I was the goddess. And so, aside from all those warm, fuzzy feelings, but like, it was so sexy, and it was so hot, and oh, gosh.
Well, that wasn't hard to make you feel that way because you were freaking, you were hot. You are serious, but honey, I don't want to question you right now for that because I'm touching yourself.
I am already.
I just started.
I wish those were my hands giving you a hand job.
Honey, so, you know, like, before I met you, I never jacked off.
Did you hear that?
Yes.
He said, honey, before I met you, I never jacked off, right?
Yes.
And you have no reason to doubt that, do you?
I have plenty of reason to doubt that. Yes, I do have reason to doubt that.
And you're basing your previous statements to us about him being with other women on what he told you, right?
Yes.
And yet we have him here via this technical medium telling us that he never jacked off before he met you. Isn't that what he's saying?
Yes.
And so what you're saying is that, well, I'll believe him when it's to my benefit, but I won't believe him when it's not.
Objection, this contrast is a testimony. We're talking about apples and oranges, sex versus masturbation.
Overruled. You may answer the question.
I don't know because I don't think that's to my benefit or not either way.
Well, what you're saying to me is, I'll believe him when he tells me that he's having some sort of intimacies with other women. You told us that you believe that, right?
Yeah.
And you
I
believe
do.
that without talking to the women, right?
Yes.
Yet, when we hear him in court saying that he never masturbated or jacked off before he met you, you're saying you won't believe that, right?
Based on what he's also
Yes
told me,
or
then
no?
that would be no, because he has jacked off.
Yes or no? You won't believe what he just said there, right?
It wasn't consistent, so no.
So no, you don't believe him, right?
No, I don't believe that.
And in fact, with regard to this recording, the person that was recording it was you, right?
Yes.
It wasn't him, right?
No.
And you're saying that it was for his benefit, though, right? That's what you told us on direct examination, right?
No, I didn't say for his benefit. It was for us to listen to.
Well, it was actually for your benefit, wasn't it?
I don't see how.
Well, in terms of who had control of it, that was you, right?
Control of the recording?
Yes, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about a recording that you made on May 10th of 2008. Are we clear on that?
Yes.
That recording was in your control, right?
Yes.
It was never in Mr. Alexander's control, was it?
No.
So that if anybody was going to enjoy that recording, it was you.
No.
Well, if anybody had it, it was you then, right?
I had it, yes.
And if anybody wanted to hear it again, that would be, the only person that could do that would be you, right?
That's not right.
How is it that Mr. Alexander could hear it if you were the only person who had it?
That's what we were trying to figure out, how to replay it for him.
Ma'am, you still had control of it though, didn't you?
For about a week, I did.
Well, yes or no, did you have control of it?
Yes, for a week.
You keep saying for a week. Are you saying that you then gave it to him?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
All right, so, but you did have control of this recording in the sense that it was in your telephone, right?
Yes.
It was never in Mr. Alexander's possession, right?
No.
So if anybody wanted to listen to it, they would have to go through you, right?
At that time, yes.
Well, what time do you think we're talking about, ma'am?
I'm talking about for the week following the recording.
I'm talking about...
Beyond that, then the answer would be no.
The week following the recording, you keep referencing that. Did something happen to the record? Did you give the recording to Mr. Alexander after a week?
No.
Did you give this recording to Mr. Alexander after 2 or 3 weeks?
No, I never gave it to him.
That's true. So if anybody was going to enjoy this recording, it wasn't Mr. Alexander because he didn't have control of it, right?
That wasn't the purpose of the recording, so that would
Did
be
I
no.
ask you what the purpose of the recording was, ma'am?
No.
I asked you if anybody was going to enjoy the fruits of this, whatever it was, it would have been you, right?
It would have been Travis.
Oh, so Travis was going to enjoy it even though he had no control over it, right?
I don't know how to answer that.
Why don't you know how to answer that?
Because
You're
the way
one
your
that-
question is
Ma'am,
phrased.
excuse me. You were the one that was in control of it, right?
Yes.
And you were the one that actually created that recording, right?
We both created the recording.
Well, no, that's not true. Was he pushing the button over and over to keep this recording going?
No,
Or was
I
that
was.
you?
I was.
So you created it then, right?
I recorded it. We both created it together.
No, you recorded it, which means that's how it came into being. He had nothing to do with the recording, did he?
I don't agree with that.
Overruled.
No, I don't agree with that.
So you're saying that somehow he was pushing a button in Mesa so that this recording would come about? Is that what you're saying?
That's not what I'm saying.
Well, technologically speaking, ma'am, the only person that was in control of creating this recording was you, right?
That's correct.
And he was a player, if you will, or one of the protagonists in this little tete-a-tete, whatever went on, right?
That's correct.
And so he didn't even know he was being recorded.
That's not correct.
Well, does he ever say at any point in that whole recording that we ever hear, could you record this for me? He doesn't say that, does he?
No, it was already recording.
Ma'am, does it say in that recording any words from Mr. Alexander that say anything to the effect that he knows that he's being recorded?
I don't think so.
When you say you don't think so, you were there when it was actually created, right?
Yes.
You were here when it was played, right?
Yes.
So you're familiar with this, right?
Yes.
And nowhere is there any indication that Mr. Alexander even knew that he was being recorded, right?
No, I don't think either of us say anything about it being recorded.
And you didn't tell him throughout this whole, from what we heard, you didn't tell him that he was being recorded, right?
I wouldn't have needed to. We already knew.
Ma'am, Yes or no?
No.
In this recording, did you tell him that he was being recorded?
I answered no.
So, and you had this recording for whatever purposes you wanted to use it, right?
Yes.
You could have posted it on the internet if you wanted to, right?
In theory, yes, I could have.
Well, that can be done. You know how to do that, right?
No, I didn't know how to get anything off the phone at that time, but if that was my goal, I could have figured that out.
Sure. And this recording that you had, for whatever reason, you chose not to erase it, right?
Not for a week.
Did you erase it after a week? Is that what you're saying?
I didn't have the opportunity. So no, I did not erase it after a week.
Pardon?
No, I didn't.
So, and you just said something about you didn't have an opportunity to erase it after a week. If this was on the 10th, what happened on May 17th that prevented you from having it erased?
Well, it may not have been exactly a week. I think it may have been the 18th instead of the 17th. But I believed that my phone was stolen, and it was actually lost for about, well, a few years. It didn't.
So according to you, this phone was stolen for approximately a couple of years, right?
Yes, I reported it stolen with the police, and I had insurance on the phone, so they replaced a new one for me.
And then it resurfaced, right?
Yes.
And, you know, yesterday when we talked about this issue involving recordings and that sort of thing, specifically involving Mr. Alexander's penis, one of the things that you told us was that, well, yes, I was the one that downloaded it onto the hard drive of my computer, right? Do you remember telling us that?
Yes.
If you would have been offended, ma'am, you could have deleted that photograph, right?
If I was offended.
Yeah, you could have, but you didn't do that, right?
Right, I wasn't offended.
Now, in terms of this recording, it also gives us a view into what your views are about the sexual relationship that you had with Mr. Alexander, doesn't it?
Yes.
And in fact, in it, you indicate that you want to blossom sexually, right?
Yes.
And that he's the person that you want to help you blossom sexually, correct?
I didn't say want, I said I have with him, and that I would like to in the future with somebody else.
Well, let's take a look so that we're totally clear about what you said. I move for the addition of Exhibit 493.
No objection.
493 is admitted.
You're not joking. I mean, there are times when we just, I'm trying to think of an example. There have been a few times where I've been bold enough to just pull you onto the bed and start, and oh my gosh, do you remember that time I came to visit you when I was still living in California, and I fell asleep on your chair next to your bed? And you just woke me up by pulling my pants off and totally licking my pussy.
Yeah.
I was so embarrassed because I just got my Brazilian on, and I was worried about what it looked like, and I was like, and the lights were bright and they were on. I was all self-conscious. But I remember that was hot. I was totally tired and I was asleep. And I would have been completely content just cuddling with you once we got into bed, but you had another agenda.
You gotta admit though, there's not many guys that would do that. It's just fun.
Well, see, that's the thing. I don't know what the ratio is, but I get the impression that I mean, it's kind of an awkward subject to bring up, but eventually we're both going to remarry people, and I just get the feeling that there aren't a lot of Mormon guys like that. And there may or may not, I'm sure there are plenty of freaky Mormon girls, but are they the marrying type? I shouldn't say that. I'm just saying, are they the type that you'd want to marry, or are the guys out there the type that I'd want to marry? And I don't know, like, I really would like to marry a return missionary, but like you, someone who can be freaky. Like, I just worry about that. There are plenty of nice people out there, but I'm like, I worry that I might feel like a wilting flower is all, who never really blossomed to her full potential, at least in the sexual realm. I feel like I have with you, but like I still have plenty of blossom time left. And I want to live all those years being that way. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's all.
Well, I'm going to enjoy your blossom when I come up there.
Yeah.
I'm going to tie you to a tree and put it in your ass, by the way.
What's that?
I'm going to tie you to a tree and put it in your ass, by the way.
Oh my gosh. That is so debasing. I like it.
Ma'am, you did hear the talk there as this started about a situation where he woke you up in a sexual fashion, didn't he?
Yes.
Do you remember on direct examination also telling us that on a previous occasion when you first had vaginal intercourse with him that he woke you up in a similar fashion, right?
Well, similarly, yes.
Well, what you told us at that time was that you were asleep. Do you remember telling us that?
Yes.
And that he pulled your panties or whatever it was that you were wearing down below, correct?
Which time?
The time that you claimed that he placed his penis inside you.
I don't know. I wasn't awake for that. My panties were missing.
Okay, what was that now?
They were missing when I woke up.
So, but you went to bed with them on, right?
I woke up without them still, and I had to look for them.
Well, ma'am, do you remember testifying on direct examination that you had your panties on and that he took your panties off? Do you remember testifying to that?
I assumed he took them off.
Well, I'm not asking you to assume anything right now. I'm asking you whether or not you remember that that's what you testified to.
Yes, I remember that.
And as part of that encounter, one of the things that you told us was that he went inside you, right?
Yes.
And he didn't have permission, right?
I guess technically not.
Well, no, not technically. That's what you told us. Do you remember telling us that?
I remember my attorney asking me if
Ma'am, I'm not asking you what your attorney asked you. I don't care about his questions. I care about your answers. My question to you, isn't it true that you responded or told us that he was doing it without your permission and that you didn't like it?
I don't remember that. I don't remember characterizing it that way.
And
So you did like it when he went inside you?
objection, this characterizes the testimony. She was asleep.
Overruled.
It wasn't really like or dislike. I was just worried is all.
You say that you're worried. So, my question to you is, if you liked it or didn't like it, did you express any preference either way to Mr. Alexander?
I don't think I did.
Did you forget what you told us that you did after that?
I said his name after that.
And then after that, what did you remember that you told us that you did?
That he, when I said his name and I kind of tried to get out from underneath him, his thrusts quickened, and then after that, we sort of broke apart and he pushed my head under the covers.
Right. So that's the same, we're talking about the same encounter, right?
Yes.
And it was consensual, though, even though you were asleep, wasn't it?
Objection, Your Honor, that mischaracterizes the law.
Overruled. You may answer.
Well, I didn't object to it.
So if you didn't object to it, it meant it was consensual, right?
Objection, Your Honor, mischaracterizes the law. She was asleep.
Approach. Proceed.
You thought it was okay when he placed his penis inside you while you were asleep, right?
Yes, maybe just not morally, but other than that, I thought it was okay.
Ma'am, is it yes?
It's yes and no, but mostly yes, I guess.
The no part in you, that didn't report it to the police, right?
That wouldn't have been the no part. So
So
no.
the no part that didn't want it, that didn't get on the telephone and call the police, did it?
Of course not, no.
So the answer is no, you didn't call the police, right?
That's the answer.
You didn't stop the sexual encounter at that point either, did you?
I attempted to stop the intercourse, but not the whole sexual encounter.
So the answer is no, you didn't stop the sexual encounter, correct?
Correct.
In fact, you continued on with the sexual encounter until you tell us there was a sexual release on his part, right?
Yes.
You never indicated to him afterwards not to do that, right?
No.
And in fact, what we just heard was you lauding him or praising him for waking you up, engaging in intercourse, oral intercourse with you, right?
Yes.
So it's the same thing, only something different is going inside your body without getting too graphic, isn't it?
Well, I was awake when there was any kind of penetration on that account, so
Well, no.
it's somewhat similar, I would say.
Ma'am, do you want to hear this again where you indicate that you say you woke me up by pulling my pants off and licking my pussy?
Yes.
So he did wake you up in the same fashion, didn't he?
I was awoken as my pants were coming off. So, yeah, similar, yes.
And you didn't have any problem with that, right?
I was embarrassed, but other than that, no.
When you say that you were embarrassed, you weren't embarrassed because of the sexual act. You were embarrassed because of the fact that you had just taken some cosmetic
Yes.
approach to your pelvic area, correct?
Yes, and the lights were bright, yes.
Right. But other than that, you didn't have any objection to it, right?
That's right.
And you wanted to continue to blossom, right?
Yes.
And you wanted to continue, and you wanted to blossom sexually, right?
Yes.
So that when we hear, for example, that there was this situation where, of the many that you've described, where he comes over to your house, for example, on the porch, and you guys do whatever it is that you do, that's part of the blossoming process, isn't it?
I would say so.
And all the other activity that occurred between the two of you, including, for example, this telephone call that took place between two consenting adults, that's also part of the blossoming process, right?
I guess so.
Well, no, you were there, right?
Well, I'm talking about sex, and I didn't have sex while I was on the phone, so,
And you told us that for you it takes two hands, right?
yeah.
And so with regard to this particular conversation, you just didn't have any fun at all, right?
No, I wasn't saying that.
Well, your words and your demeanor speak for themselves on the telephone, correct?
Yes.
And one of the other things that we know from that conversation in terms of your blossoming is that you and Mr. Alexander discussed making a movie, right?
Yes.
And you discussed making a sexual movie, correct?
Yes.
And it wasn't like you were telling him, no, I don't want to do that sexual movie. You actually were into it as much as he was, right?
Yes.
And in fact, as part of this sexual blossoming, there are other things that you asked him to do for you, didn't you?
Yes.
Let's take a look at some of them. Take a look at Exhibit 494. Recognize that?
Yes.
These are two text messages that you sent to Mr. Alexander, correct?
Yes.
What is the date of those?
The date is February 25th.
And there is a time there, but as you previously told us when you first testified on direct, that time is 7 hours ahead of what the real time is, correct?
That's correct.
Move to the admission of Exhibit 494.
objection.
494 submitted.
Let's take a look at what 494 says. This is you sending him this text message, right?
Yes,
And this was part of the relationship that you had with him, right?
that's right.
There was a sexual component to it, wasn't it?
Yes,
And it was always a component that you partook of as much as he did, right?
yes,
And in it you say, if you're a lucky boy and you promise to give me a good, well-deserved spanking, and then there's a period there, right?
yes,
And then you also say, maybe you could give my ass a too much needed pounding too. Kidding, correct?
yes,
You're kidding about the second portion, but not the first portion, correct?
yes.
Take a look at Exhibit 495. Do you recognize that series of text messages?
Yes,
And those also involve some sexual activities between the two of you, correct?
yes, well, ones we're anticipating,
Pardon?
ones we're planning on.
And the date on this is February 26th of '08, correct?
26th?
Well, let me have you look at it. At least that's what it says.
It would have been the 25th, but it says the 26th.
And that's because of the 7-hour issue that we've talked about before.
That's right.
I move for the admission of Exhibit 495.
No objection.
Submitted.
Take a look at Exhibit 495. You start out by saying, oh my gosh, this is so freaking hot, I want to lick it up, and then sit on it, you are so tasty, my goodness, correct?
Yes,
You were talking about his penis, right?
yes, he sent me a photo of it.
And it appears he did send you a photograph, correct?
Yes,
You were not offended by him sending you a photograph, correct?
no,
Even though we had a photograph here that was introduced, it was the same sort of photograph as the one that was introduced at trial, right?
yes,
Nothing different than the one that was here that was introduced. In other words, it was his penis and whatever was happening with it, correct?
in that regard, nothing was different.
And in fact, he then said, I'm glad you like it, right?
Yes,
And then you said, oh yes, I want to fuck you like a dirty, horny little schoolgirl, right?
yes,
So the schoolgirl issue here in this conversation is being brought up by you, not by him, right?
that's right.
And in fact, this issue about the schoolgirl that may have been presented as part of the conversation on May 10th of 2008, well, you were enjoying it too, weren't you?
I don't think we said schoolgirl on the tape.
Pardon?
I don't think I said schoolgirl on the tape, but as far as that goes, yes.
Yeah. You like dressing up like a horny little schoolgirl, for lack of a better term, right?
Well, I think I said on direct I didn't have a schoolgirl outfit, but it was that was the idea.
You did enjoy dressing up for him, right?
Yes,
And you enjoyed, at least indicating here, in February of 2008, that it had to do with looking like a little schoolgirl, correct?
I guess so, yeah.
Well, no, you keep saying you guess so, but isn't that what you wrote?
No, I didn't say look in that text message.
Pardon?
You said looking like, and I don't see that in the text
All
message.
right, so, okay, let's read it. I want to fuck you like a dirty, horny little schoolgirl. So that implies that you are dressed up in a certain fashion, right?
Yes.
And it also implies that, or indicates that it's you that's the person that likes this sort of activity and looking like a horny little schoolgirl, right?
Yes.
Although we heard previously some talk about braids and that it was only him that wanted that. It was a consensual, mutual relationship, sexually speaking, wasn't it?
Yes, always.
This issue involving the idea that there was going to be a movie and what was going to happen in the movie, part of it, or what it took place during a conversation that you had on May 10th of 2008, right?
Yes.
And it can be characterized as phone sex, correct?
Yes.
And it can also be fair to say that what people say during phone sex isn't necessarily true. Wouldn't you agree to that?
I would agree to that.
Well, ma'am, what you said in your phone sex conversation with Mr. Alexander, according to your own testimony, part of it was a lie, wasn't it?
Are you talking about how he never jerked off?
No, I'm talking about what you said in that conversation. What you said, part of what was going on was a lie, wasn't it?
Yes, part of it was a lie.
Sure, it was a lie, right? And so at least if we're using this conversation as a point of reference, people, you and Mr. Alexander, but you specifically, you lied to him, right?
I did.
And there was no harm in it because it was just a fantasy kind of conversation, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was just fantasy.
Right, and so that if he says he wants to tie you up to a tree and stick it up your ass, that could also be seen as fantasy, right?
Yes.
That never happened, did it?
No.
And talking about, for example, these things about the movie and that sort of thing, whether or not you believed it or not, it was part of the fantasy of that conversation, wasn't it?
Yes.
So, for example, if you just listen to one of these snippets or one of these exchanges, we can see that perhaps it's just all a fantasy. Let me have this marked as an exhibit. I move for the admission of Exhibit 496.
No objection.
496 is admitted.
And ma'am, before we listen to it, in this particular excerpt, you would actually indicate that you believe that maybe this making of this movie could be artistic. I want you to listen to that.
I was saying, I'm kind of envisioning one, like when you're titty fucking me, but like I'm looking with my head tilted back, so all you can really see is like the outline of my chin and some of my cheek and jawbone, and like my ears and hair, but you can't really see the rest of my face. You could just see a dick between two tits, like in focus with the neck and everything sort of a little bit blurry, but they're like kind of artistic, you know what I'm saying?
That's great.
Yeah, I don't know if we could do that, because your legs may take up the spot where the camera should be, but I think we could get something like that. Or vice versa. Ooh, I've got more ideas. Okay, go ahead.
Well, we'll work that out. Worst case scenario, we could do it from like the reverse angle or just like the other way.
And we could still blur my face and put your cock in focus. You have a good-looking dick, baby. I'm just gonna let you know.
You like my dick?
Yeah. It's like, it just, it's so smooth. And it goes so, every time you fuck me, it feels so good. So you went just where I needed it. Just went where I just needed it bad. You fucked me so right.
You do say that it could be an artistic endeavor, right?
Yes.
And in fact, that comes from the fact that you like to take photographs, correct?
Yes.
And that's sort of one side of your life that you have, correct?
Yes.
And so, again, the fact that you're talking about it doesn't mean that you're actually going to do it, right?
We were kind of tentatively planning it, but I don't know whether we were actually going to do it or not.
Right, and it's a situation, again, that sometimes when people are involved in a sexual situation like what this appears to be, they get caught up in the heat of the moment, and they say things that are related to what's going on, correct?
I would agree with that.
Ma'am, and during this conversation, you and he actually discussed whether or not you guys should stop this particular activity of having sex, don't you?
Stop having sex?
Or stop having sex, stop having porn sex, that sort of thing.
I think we did, yes.
Well, let's hear what you actually say. I move for the admission of Exhibit 497.
No objection.
497 is admitted.
Yeah, well, I don't know, maybe. I can't wait to get pictures of jizz on your face.
That's gonna be cool, actually. It's gonna be,
Try to get one as I'm coming on your face. And then,
yeah, definitely.
like, mid-shot.
Mm-hmm. You make me so horny. I seriously think about having sex with you every day. Several times a day. Think about how it feels to have your cock deep inside of me. I remember it. And I want it again.
Is it wrong that I'm glad we started fucking?
What?
Is it wrong that I'm glad that we started fucking?
Well, if it's wrong, then I don't want to be right. Because I'm glad too. Like, seriously.
Internally, I'm like, okay, it's Jodi, I'm just Jodi, I'm not Jodi.
Like, I don't know. What's wrong is that I wish we were doing it before. Because
Yeah.
that was good, and it's
Once we did it, why not do it? Yeah.
I know what you mean.
And it appears that there's a bit of a conflict because the two of you keep engaging in sexual activity, correct?
That's correct.
Whether it be by telephone or whether it be in person, correct?
Yes.
And this issue involving you and he having sex, it also created a conflict for him, right?
Yes.
And you knew that it had to do with the LDS faith, right?
Yes.
And you were also LDS, and that created a conflict for you too, right?
Yes.
And so it wasn't a situation that it was a secret to both of you that perhaps, since you were both members of the LDS faith, this is not what you should be engaging in, right?
That's right.
But neither of you cared, right?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Ma'am, you still continue to engage in sexual activities with him, even though you had this conflict, didn't you?
Yes.
And even though he says he has this conflict here, he still continued to have sex with you, right?
Yes.
So even though you were two conflicted persons, you still continued to engage in this activity, right?
Yeah, that's what the conflict was about.
Right. And in fact, you even had a description of the two of you, didn't you, in that conversation that we just heard from May 10th of 2008, don't you?
Yes.
Let's hear what you said. I move for the admission of 498.
No objection.
498 is admitted.
That's right. I asked you not to so I could get in the... Hang on, I thought I heard somebody. Let me just double check. Oh, I think it was just my charger. So. All right, we're good. The coast is clear. Let me get back into the groove. Things.
Honey, the pictures I'm going to take are so hot. Giggles.
Like, what are we going to do with ourselves? We are just horny toads.
Ma'am, that's just an acknowledgement there that both of you are into each other sexually, correct?
That's correct.
And there's no indication from anything that we've heard that you were offended by the physical sexual activities that were going on, right?
Right.
It may have been a conflict, but the two of you enjoyed each other. Or at least you enjoyed him as much as it appeared that he was enjoying you, right?
Yes.
And you had at least that kind of relationship to the point where you actually had a name for him, or a pet name for him, didn't you?
Yes.
Let me show you this exhibit. Take a look at Exhibit 499. Do you recognize it?
Yes.
It's a text message that you sent, right?
Yes.
What's the date?
The date is 21st. Actually, it would have been the 20th of January.
And you're saying that it was the 21st of January because of the time difference, right?
Yes, it was the 20th, but it shows the 21st.
Move for the admission of Exhibit 499.
No objection.
499 is admitted.
And that's you sending him a message saying, hey, Hadi Biscotti will call you. Will you call me before you hit the sack, right?
Yes,
I have a question about tomorrow morning. Thanks, my dear, correct?
that's correct.
And you actually called him Hadi Biscotti, correct?
Yes,
And that's because he was, in part, because he was special to you, right?
yes,
Because apparently at that time you were in love with him, right?
I believe I was. Yes,
And it's something that two people who are intimate have in common, right?
yes,
But he really wasn't that special to you, was he?
I wouldn't say that.
Well, let's take a look at another exhibit. 287. This is to Ryan Burns. You see that? It says Ryan's PPL, Gmail.
Right.
You're me. You see that?
Yes,
And you say to him, at some point before you go meet him, hey, Hadi Biscotti, what's new, right?
yes,
Isn't that the same thing that you called Mr. Alexander?
yes, I called a lot of people that.
So what you're saying is, when you call that Mr. Alexander that, it didn't mean anything then.
I wouldn't say it was meaningless, no.
It could also mean that when you started calling Mr. Burns Hadi Biscotti, was that Mr. Alexander really didn't mean that much to you, right?
That's not what it meant.
Well, it could, though, based on what we see.
She's answered the question.
Sustained.
You called them both by the same name, right?
Yes,
And you only had one encounter with Mr. Burns, correct?
well, I met him once, and then I saw him again, so that would be twice, but if you're talking about the physical encounter, yeah.
Right.
One time, I guess.
Yeah, one time, right?
Unless you count shaking his hand, which I guess that doesn't really
Pardon?
count.
I didn't hear what you said.
I'm sorry, unless you count we shook hands and spoke briefly. I don't even really remember it, so it was pretty brief, but
In terms of a one-on-one with
Yes,
Mr.
that
Burns,
would
it
be
was only
one.
one time, right?
yes,
And you're already calling him Hadi Biscotti, at least through this PPL, or at least through this instant messaging thing, right?
that's right.
And exhibit number 286, it tells us a little bit more of what actually happened when you went to see him. I want you to go down here and read what he says, starting with the ha-ha, if you can read it. If not, I'll bring it in. Go ahead and read it out loud.
It says, haha, well, we woke up, we sat there for a bit, and then we held each other, and then we started to kiss. Then you said I could not be comfortable, and you adjusted me.
So it does say that you told him that he could not be comfortable, and so you adjusted him, right?
Yes.
And then what else does he say? It's above it.
Then you pressed your body really close to mine and started to kiss me.
So you were on top of him, weren't you?
Yes, well, kind of on top of him off to the side a little. I think on his left.
But you did start to press your body close to him, right?
Yes.
And then you say what? It's right above it.
Well, I think it's out of order, but I say, well, I would gladly give it to you.
And then right above it, he asks.
Can I ask what else you might give me?
And your answer is?
You can ask, but you'll have to wait and see for that one.
Bottom line, you're sort of already involved in the same sort of give and take that you were involved with Mr. Alexander, correct?
Yes.
Ma'am, there's a number of stories that you gave in this particular case involving the killing. There was one that you gave on the 15th of July of 2008 to Detective Flores, right?
Yes.
There's another one that you gave on July 16th of 2008 to Detective Flores, right?
Yes.
But then you still gave another view of what happened to 48 hours, right?
I think I was inconsistent in my lies. Yes.
So let's take a look at what you may have said 48 hours. I move for the admission of Exhibit 500.
No objection.
500 is admitted.
You feel comfortable talking
Yeah,
about it?
let me talk about, I'll talk about this, and nobody knows this. The detectives know this, because I've spoken with them. Boy, this is really hard. I'm trying to think if I want to say this or not. There's a lot of evidence that places me at Travis's house the day he was, or not just the day he was killed, but the day, that most of that week. And there is a reason for that, and that reason is that that I did see Travis the day that he passed away, and a lot of things happened that day. I almost lost my life as well, and I was told that I can't speak about it or tell anyone about it, because my family's life was in danger over it. I was told that if I did, that they would all die, and that I would die, and that was kind of the end of the story. There was an argument among some people, two individuals, that one wanted to take my life, and one said, that's not why we came. And at one point, the guy with the gun sort of succumbed to her pressure, I think, because he was holding the gun at my forehead, and I was on the ground, on my knees, and I was near the armoire of where he kept his TV in his bedroom, and Travis was in the bathroom. She was standing over Travis near him, and the guy with the gun was standing near me, and again, this argument was going on back and forth. And I just remember holding my head and closing my eyes. And then there was so much that went on that day, but the short of it is he pulled the trigger and nothing happened, just a click. And I realized then that he probably, I don't know if that means that he was out of bullets, or I don't know what that means. I wasn't that familiar with handguns. And so at that point, I pushed past him and I ran down the stairs. He didn't make much of an effort to stop me. But I could almost swear that I heard someone following me down the stairs, and I ran out the front door, and I got into my car, and I drove, and I left.
Ma'am, nowhere in that recitation or in any of the interviews that you gave with 48 Hours did you ever indicate that you had memory loss, correct?
That's correct.
And in fact, you gave a slightly different view of the same event to 48 Hours on another occasion, didn't you?
Yes, couldn't keep my story straight.
I move for the admission of Exhibit 501.
No objection.
501 is admitted.
Again, I was looking down and going through some photos. He is really critical of himself. You know, we're all our own worst critics, and so, you know, some pictures he liked, some he didn't. And I was looking through the pictures, and I heard again a loud pop, and I was hit on the back of the head. I don't think I was out very long. But when I came to, I was kind of laying next to the bathtub and the shower right next to each other. And Travis was on all fours on the tile. And he was, well, I say all fours, but one of his hands was actually holding his head. And I mean, he wasn't laying down or anything. He was kind of on his knees and on the, you know, on his hands. And at that point, I looked over toward the entrance of the bathroom. There was a hallway and two people were walking down the hallway, and I ran into the closet. It's a big closet. And I was going to run out the other door, except he stopped me with a gun pointed at my forehead. And I was just, you know, when you have a gun pointed to your forehead, you just do anything. So he told me to get down onto my knees and stand over or sit over by the armoire. So I just stayed there, squatting on my knees next to the armoire. And he left the room for a minute, maybe a few minutes. And she was in the bathroom, standing over Travis. And I charged her. I ran down that hall and I pushed her as hard as I could. And she fell over him, landed near the sink. There's two sinks in the master bath, and he landed near the left sink, kind of near the trash can, close to the windows. And I started to pull on him, and I said, come on, come on, come on, let's go, let's go. And he just wasn't, he was sluggish and lethargic, and he just wasn't getting up, and he wasn't really saying much of anything. He was there, and he was conscious, and I could see that. He wasn't saying much. I was able to get him he was sort of not crawling, but he was kind of moving and trying to stand up. And I was able to get him about halfway down the hallway when she came back at me, and we struggled for a few minutes. And again, she was doing what she could to overpower me, and she was kicking me, and she was stomping on my feet, and she was trying to kick my knees, and I was kind of bending them or trying to do what I could. And he came back in the room, and again, I had to go back to where I was sitting and stay there, and that's when they both began to argue about whether or not I should die. And there was an argument that went on back and forth between them for several minutes. At least it felt like several minutes. And he didn't want to, and she did. And she kept saying why they should, and he kept saying, well, that's not why we came here. And you know, after he had gone through my purse again, he finally just pulled the trigger, and I thought, honestly, it's over. It's the weirdest feeling to think that it's going to be over at any second, and then someone pulls the trigger, but you're still there. And at that point, I just ran. I pushed right past him, and I flew down the stairs. And like there's part of I wasn't even in my body. I think I was, but everything felt numb. I was hyperventilating, and my heart was racing. And so even as I went down the stairs, there was part of me, like my brain was telling my legs, don't screw up, or you're going to fly down these stairs, and you're not going to get away. So I'm, trying my best not to stumble down these stairs, and I just went out as fast as I could and out the door and slammed the door behind me and got in the car and left.
And that's another version of the events that occurred on June 4th of 2008, correct?
Yes,
And they're not true.
neither of them. Well, it's all the same thing, it's just different versions. Couldn't keep my lies straight.
So the answer is they're not true, right?
Neither of them, yes.
Ma'am, you did also continue to talk to 48 Hours about coming to Mesa. Do you remember talking to them about that?
Yes.
And do you remember talking to them about how what your plans were initially? Do you remember about that?
Yes.
And the reason that you came out to Mesa, you didn't have a plan initially, correct?
Do you mean on June 4th?
Pardon?
Are you talking about on June 4th?
I'm talking about when you left Wairika.
What was your question? I'm sorry.
My question is, according to you, you didn't have any plans to come to Mesa initially when you left Wairika, correct?
That's correct.
And in fact, that's something that you told 48 Hours, right?
Yes.
Take a look at what you told them. Move for the admission of Exhibit 502.
No objection.
502 is admitted.
So tell me about this trip on this particular day. Did you plan that in advance, or did you surprise
No,
them?
I'm really kind of like go by the wind when I take my road trips. I usually plan more than I can actually do, and then I cross some off the list when I feel I can't. So on this last trip, my plan was to go to Monterey, to Los Angeles, to San Diego, to Utah, and then over to Death Valley, and then back up to Wairika. And it certainly didn't go anything like that. It went Santa Cruz, and then Monterey. And then I went to LA and Pasadena. And then I skipped San Diego. And it was when I was in Pasadena that night that I decided to go to Mesa. And Travis had found out about my road trip about a week prior. And he has this way of kind of guilting me. Not in a bad way, just like of making me sort of feel bad. So he said, well, why don't you come to Mesa instead, and you can visit me. And I was like, no, you know, I have other things that I need to do and other plans and other people. I didn't say it in that way because you have to kind of be delicate about it. Otherwise, you know, he would take offense, I think. And so he would say things like, okay, I see, whatever. I see how it is. You don't love me, you know, just as a joke, though. And so it just kind of pulls on my heartstrings a little. And again, I was weak and I folded and I decided that I'm going to go. And so I called him when I was in Pasadena and said, guess what? And he said, what? And I said, I'm coming to Mesa. And he said, really? And I said, yeah. He's like, all right, cool. And so, you know, we hung up the phone and I drove. And I told him he didn't have to wait up for me because, you know, I was still in Pasadena. And that's probably a good 5 hours and something, just all the way to Mesa. So, and as well as that, my phone was about to die. So, you know, I just said, you know, if I don't speak to you again until I get there, then, you know, that's why. And so I showed up, I think, around 4 a.m. And he was still awake. He had stayed up all night. He was on the internet looking up some videos on YouTube, some silly videos. And we watched some more videos for a little while, and then it was just like I was exhausted from the drive, so we just went to bed and went to sleep. And, you know.
With regard to the videos that he was looking at, we've heard something about quicker, faster, stronger, something like that. They weren't of any sexual nature, were they?
No.
And in fact, it may have been the way you described it, that it was some people with some sort of weird or funny headgear that were just dancing around. That's the way you described it,
It
right?
looked that way, yes.
And so you actually left Wairika on June 2nd of 2008, correct?
Yes.
And prior to that, though, you made some preparations, didn't you?
Yes.
You made some preparations in the sense that, according to you, you made a reservation to rent a car, right?
Right.
And the reservation to rent the car was made not in Wairika, but in some other place, right?
It was made online. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, in Reading, for Reading, yes.
Right. And Wairika does have some rental car companies, correct?
That's correct.
And in fact, what happened was that when you went to Reading to rent the car, you even had to, for lack of a better term, inconvenience somebody else to take you to get your car, to get the rental car, and then take you back to their house, right?
That's right.
And it would have been much more convenient in Wairika to go rent the car in Wairika, wouldn't it?
Not for my bank account, no.
Well, when you're saying your bank account, you're talking about financial reasons, right?
Right.
And how much money did you take with you in cash?
I don't recall, but it was probably a few hundred, I think.
So when you say a few hundred, are we talking about 200?
Maybe that, not much more, somewhere in that ballpark. It was between like 80 and 200. I don't remember the exact amount.
So it's between $80 and $200, maximum being $200, right?
I think. I don't really remember as far as cash.
Well, could it have been $300?
It could have. I don't remember having that much cash on me, but I guess it could have.
If you don't remember having that much cash on you, then it wasn't $300, right?
Well, it just means I don't remember. Probably not.
All right, and so previously during the direct examination, you told us that when you go on these trips, you don't take usually more than $200. Do you remember telling us that?
Yeah, that's typical.
And so in this particular case, you said, well, I had financial issues, and so I decided to rent out of Reading because it was cheaper, right?
That's right.
But it would have been more convenient, though, to rent from Wairika, correct?
Convenient for who?
You.
No.
In terms of picking up the car, it wouldn't have been convenient?
No.
Well, Wairika, you told us, was a small town, right?
Yes.
And you indicated that everybody sort of knows everybody there, right?
That's pretty much the case.
And the other thing that you told us about Wairika was that people know everybody else's business there, right?
Usually.
Right, and in fact, one of the examples that you gave us of where people in Wairika know what's going on was the example when you were 17 and you went to, or you skipped a class. Do you remember telling us that?
Yes.
It was a history exam that you had to prepare for, right?
That's right.
And you indicated that you went somewhere in the car and you were studying, right?
Yes.
And while you were studying, your father found you, right?
Yes.
And one of the explanations or reasons that you gave for that was that Wairika is a very small town, right?
I don't remember giving that explanation because that's not why he found me.
Well, you indicated that you don't know how he found you, right?
I knew how he found me.
Well, that's not what you told us on direct examination.
Oh, I mean, I knew why he went to go looking for me. How he found me was he was just driving around. I'm sorry.
Ma'am, that's not what you told us on direct examination, right?
I don't remember. That's not the fact.
Again, do you have problems remembering what you just told us less than a couple of weeks ago?
Occasionally, I guess.
And in this particular case, you're having trouble remembering what you told us as to how your father found you, right?
I'm having trouble with how you're characterizing it, I think.
Well, again, we're going to get into this word exchange issue, but my question to you is, do you remember telling us on direct examination that Wairika is a small town and that's part of the reason or how your father found you? Do you remember telling us that?
Yes.
And so Wairika in 2008 is not much bigger than it was in 1997 or 1998 when this happened, right?
No, I think it's about 1,000 more in population.
Right. It's only 1,000 more in population. In other words, it's not a town that's exploding in terms of population, right?
Yes.
It is or it is not.
Yes, that's right. I'm sorry.
And so that in people in Wairika, if somebody does something, more likely than not, they may end up meeting somebody that they know, right?
Objection calls
Overruled.
Yes.
So, for example, if you went to one of the two or either of the two car rental agencies that are there in Wairika, somebody may have been able to know or talk about it later if they were asked about it, correct?
Perhaps. People wouldn't know me, though, because I hadn't lived there for 10, 15 years.
But they may have, right?
Some. A few
Because
high school
again-
friends or something.
Again, it's not a very large town, right?
Yes.
And in fact, what's the population is what, 11,000?
I think it's 7,000.
7,000?
Something, yeah.
And you, at the time, back in June 2nd of 2008, you were working, right?
Yes.
And where you were in this town, there aren't that many bars, right?
I think there are like 5 or 6 bars.
Right. And there isn't one called Margaritaville, right?
No, there's not.
You worked at Casa Ramos, right?
Yes.
And you had some time off, didn't you?
Yes.
And this was going to be part of your vacation, right?
Road trip, yes.
The road trip was your vacation. There isn't one called Margaritaville, right?
No, there's not.
You worked at Casa Ramos, right?
Yes.
And you had some time off, didn't you?
Yes.
And this was going to be part of your vacation, right?
Road trip, yes.
The road trip was your vacation, right?
It was partially vacation, partially a business trip.
And when you say partially business trip, what you're saying is, for example, that if you went to buy gas, that's something that could be deductible, correct?
If it was for the business purpose, yes, it would be deductible.
Sure. And in fact, since you were going to go to Utah, going to a gas station, it would make sense to save the receipts so that you could then deduct them from your income taxes, right?
That's right.
And in this particular case, wouldn't matter whether or not you paid cash or you paid with a credit card, right?
It wouldn't matter for tax purposes. no.
Right, as long as you had the receipts, right?
Yes.
And in this case, so you did pay at least attention to the receipts that you got, for example, from the gas station, right?
What do you mean by pay attention?
Kept them.
Yeah, I throwed everything in a shoebox.
Right, you threw everything in the shoebox, everything related to this trip, right?
Yes.
All of the receipts from this trip were thrown in this shoebox that we've seen previously, right?
No, probably not all, but just whatever was left over in my wallet.
Well, but you were trying to pay attention to keep the receipts that were related to a business expense, right?
Somewhat. I'm very disorganized, but that's kind of my effort, yeah.
Well, no, that's what you were attempting to do, right?
Yes.
And in fact, you did save some of the receipts involved with this particular trip, right?
Yes.
And so you're in Wairika and you decide instead to rent a car from Redding, California, right?
Yes.
And that's south of Wairika, correct?
Yes, on my way.
And it is on the way, but it is south, correct?
Yes.
And it's what, 90 miles away?
I think it's 99 miles.
So in terms of travel, we're talking about what? Close to 2 hours?
Maybe just under 2 hours, I think.
And on this particular day that you left, on June 2nd of 2008, you left the house around 5 o'clock in the morning, something like that, right?
Yeah, I think so. It was very early in the morning.
Well, you were at the Redding airport by 8 o'clock, weren't you?
Yes.
And so did you get there before 8 o'clock and just wait around, or did you get there at about the same, at that time?
I don't remember waiting. Well, I waited a little bit because there was a line, but not waiting for them to open.
And somebody was with you, correct?
Yes.
A guy was with you, right?
I can't remember if it was my brother's neighbor or my sister-in-law, but I think it was my sister-in-law. So either one of them dropped me off and picked me up or vice versa.
So when you're saying that they dropped you off and picked you up, what you're saying is that they did not get out of the car that took you to the Redding airport, correct?
I don't remember.
You don't remember whether or not they went up to the counter with you?
I think I was alone.
So you were here when Mr. Colombo testified, correct, as to whether or not you were accompanied, correct?
Yes.
And so what time did you arrive at this would be your sister's house, right?
Yes.
What time did you get there?
Before renting the car, you mean?
Yes. That was the only time that you got there on June 2nd, correct?
No, I got there with the rental car afterward and
Pardon?
took a nap. No, I went back to our house.
All right, the first time before you rented the car.
In the morning. I don't remember the exact time.
So it would have been, and they knew you were coming, correct?
Yes.
And so they were ready to then take you down to the airport, right?
Yes.
And they dropped you off, and then you went to pick up the car, right?
I believe they did, yes.
And one of the things that happened is that you initially were given a car, or rented a car by Mr. Colombo.
Yes.
Colombo, correct?
Yes.
And the car that he offered you initially was red, right?
Yes.
And you told him that you didn't want the red car, right?
That's right.
And the reason that you told him that you didn't want the red car was because it would call attention to the, or it would stand out more, correct?
No.
Well, didn't you tell him that you did want to exchange the car though, right?
Yes.
And you told him that red is a color that police officers sort of focus on. Do you remember telling him that? Is that yes or no?
I'm trying to remember. I don't think I worded it that way.
So you did give him a reason why you didn't want that car, right?
Yeah.
And part of it had to do with the color, right?
Yes.
You didn't want the color red,
Yes.
correct? The color red seems to stand out, doesn't it?
I don't know. I just heard they get more tickets.
Right, and so it had to do with the police department, right? You did not want to stand out, and that's why you wanted a different color, correct?
Not the police department because I'd be on the freeway. I just didn't want to get tickets, and I
Well-
heard they get more tickets.
Who do you think gives traffic citations, ma'am?
On the freeways in California, it's the California Highway Patrol.
That's police, aren't they?
I don't think they're police. I think they're law enforcement, but not categorized as police. Not to my knowledge, anyway.
So if there's a crime, you're saying that the California Highway Patrol doesn't respond to them?
They respond as well as maybe the sheriff's office or something. Depends on the district, I would imagine.
Right, and so you were afraid that police, whether it includes the California Highway Patrol or somebody driving down the street, that they would focus in on your car because you had heard that police get more tickets involving a red car, correct?
Afraid? No, I wasn't afraid. I just didn't want to shell out more money for tickets.
Right. So, afraid may not be the word that you like. What word would you like? Concerned?
I don't know. I
Well,
guess.
no, you're the one that said afraid wasn't the right word. Why don't you tell me what word you would use in describing your reluctance in taking a red car?
It was motivated by financial frugality.
Well, you're telling us then that the red car was cheaper to rent than the white car.
No, in theory, I would be less likely to get a speeding ticket and shell out hundreds of dollars if I were not in a red car.
So what you're saying is the red car, in your view, because of the color, stands out more to police departments, whether they be California Highway Patrol, whether they be the Salinas Police Department, whether they be the Redding Police Department, right?
I'd be speculating, but I guess that's why they get more tickets. I don't know.
Well, no, I don't want you to guess because I want you to tell us what you were thinking at the time because you were the one that made this request involving the red car.
Well, my thought is that drivers of red cars tend to drive faster, they get more tickets. That's just what I've always been told.
Right. But that's what other drivers do. You supposedly were going to adhere to the speed limit or within 10 miles of it, right?
Usually, I tried.
Right, so if you do that, then you really shouldn't have too much of a concern about a traffic citation then, right?
That's not right. I've been cited before when the radar was off.
And how many times have you been cited before for speeding, ma'am, when your speed was over 10 miles an hour, over the speed limit?
Several times.
Give me one time.
One time I was driving on Highway 1 south of Carmel, or just entering Carmel Highlands, and I was going, I think, 60-something in a 50, and I got pulled over, and he clocked me at, he said 79.
Let me stop you. You said you were going 60-something in a 50-mile-per-hour zone, right?
Yes.
That means you were going over the 10-mile issue that I just presented to you.
Yes.
So in other words, what I'm asking you, can you give me an example where you were driving either the speed limit or within 9 miles of the speed limit where you were given a ticket?
Objection, relevance. Your Honor.
We are going to take the noon recess at this time. Ladies and gentlemen, please be back in the designated area at 1:25. Please remember the admonition, you are excused. Please be seated. The record will show the jury has left the courtroom. Ms. Arias, you may step down. Counsel, is there anything else before lunch?
No, ruling on the objection.
Why don't you approach? Thank you. Please be seated. Ms. Arias, please take the stand. Record will show the presence of the defendant and all counsel. Ms. Arias, when responding to questions, be sure that you let Mr. Martinez finish his question before you start to speak. The court reporter cannot take down two people at one time.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Please stand for the jury.
Please be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and all counsel. And to sustain the last objection, Mr. Martinez, you may continue.
Ma'am, we were talking about the car rental in Redding, California, and you ultimately were given a second car, correct?
Yes.
And the color of this car was white, correct?
Yes.
And that was more to your liking because of this issue involving the traffic citations, correct?
Yes.
And this car had a capacity of over 12 gallons per tankful, correct?
It was 10 or 12. I don't remember.
Well, okay. Do you remember, this is Exhibit 237.018. Do you remember filling up with gas in Winnemucca, Nevada?
I remember running out of gas in Nevada, and
When you say that you ran out of gas, there was absolutely no gas in your car, or you were just running low?
it was, the gas light was on, so.
When you say that the gas light was on, doesn't mean that you're not moving. It means that you are low on gasoline, correct?
Yeah, it was kind of below.
Are you saying that that's where it happened in Winnemucca, Nevada?
No, I was probably, I think he said I was 15 or 20 miles from there.
And you were able to make it to Winnemucca, correct?
No, I pulled over.
And you pulled over and did what?
I went in and asked the guy where the nearest gas station is. He said it's about 15 miles. I think he said 15 miles further. I didn't think I would make it on E, so I went and started putting gas in the car, and he came out and assisted me.
And you were putting gas from what?
From one of the gas cans.
All right. And let's just take a look at this exhibit right here. And it indicates that it's your name, right?
Yes.
It's from Winnemucca, right?
Yes.
And it indicates that the amount that you purchased was 12.175 gallons, right?
Yes.
And you paid $49.91, correct?
That's right.
And this issue involving you running out of gas, that's not something that you told us on direct examination, correct? Yes or
No, I was not.
And so you have this car that has at least a capacity of 12 gallons, correct?
Objection, Foundation.
Approach.
Now, with regard to Winnemucca, you filled up your car with gas, didn't you?
Yes, I put gas in it.
All the way till it was full, right?
I probably, because I usually filled up until the
Yes or
nozzle
no?
clicked.
Yes or no, in Winnemucca, did you fill it up with gas?
I put gas in it. I probably filled it up.
So you're saying that you're not sure if you filled it up all the way with gas then, right?
That's right.
But you did make a purchase in Winnemucca pursuant to Exhibit 237.018, in which 12.175 gallons were purchased by you, right?
Yes.
And so it could be that the tank was 15 gallons of gas, right?
Objection calls for speculation.
Overruled. You may answer.
Right?
That's possible.
But at least we know that this gas tank could hold at least 12.175 gallons of gas, right?
Right.
And before you went on this trip, it started on June 2nd of 2008, correct?
Yes.
Started around 5 o'clock in the morning, correct?
It was early in the mornings, around that time.
Because you were at Redding at 8 a.m., correct?
Yes.
Well, we saw the receipts. Were you here when the receipts were shown of you renting the car at approximately 8:01?
Yes, I was here.
And so if it takes you 1 to 2 hours to drive down there, that would mean you would have to get up pretty early, right?
Yes.
And so you got up pretty early, you drove down to Redding, but in anticipation of that, you actually called somebody by the name of Daryl Brewer, right?
Yeah, and I'm sorry I didn't get up early. I was up all night. So.
Pardon?
You said I got up early. I just wanted to make that clear. I was up all night. So.
Okay, so what you're saying is you didn't sleep that night, right?
I didn't sleep that night, no.
Okay. So, but you did, in anticipation of this trip, contact an old boyfriend, right?
Yes.
And that would be Daryl Brewer, right?
Yes.
You made a number of telephone calls to him, correct?
Probably.
And when you say probably, it means that you're not sure, right?
I'm not sure, no.
So you at least made 2 calls to him, though, right?
If that's what my phone records reflect, then that would be right.
Now, I'm asking what your memory reflects.
I don't remember actually calling him before leaving on my trip.
So you have no idea as to whether or not you even called them before you went on the trip then, right?
I don't recall. Well, of course I called him before the trip, but I don't know how soon before the trip.
So you don't remember whether or not it was in May then, is that what you're saying?
I did talk to him in May.
And it was toward the end of May, correct?
Probably.
And when you keep saying probably, it means that you're not sure, but that you do not deny that you made a call, right?
That's right.
And so you made this call to him at the end of May, and you asked him whether or not he had any spare gas cans for you to use, right?
That sounds right.
No, I'm not asking what sounds right. Is that what you did?
I think I did, because he's the one I ended up borrowing them from.
Well, ma'am, are you having trouble again with your memory with regard to events then?
Yeah, because there were a few different...
So the answer is yes. You are having trouble with your memory.
With that question.
Well, are you having trouble? It's not the only question that you've had trouble with. Are you having trouble with the memory of the events leading up to your trip?
Leading up to, yeah,
Okay.
a little bit.
And you would agree then that the events leading up to your trip were probably the end of May, and the murder was, or the killing was on June 4th of 2008. So are you saying that that whole period you're having problems with your memory? Or is it just the end of May?
Well, there are some things I recall and some things I don't.
So my question is, are you having trouble with both or just the end of May?
I'd say my whole life is like that, so both.
So you're saying that you're having trouble remembering everything or events throughout your life. Is that what you're saying?
Some things, not everything.
And sometimes you know what you can remember very well, and sometimes you can't. Is that what you're saying?
You mean can't at all or can't remember well?
Can't remember. Both well or at all?
Yeah,
Tell me.
all of the above.
And so at the end of May then, you're saying that you really don't remember whether or not you made a telephone call to Mr. Brewer. Is that what you're saying?
I don't remember specifically, but I know I called him at one point.
All right, and you did call him because you wanted to talk to him about some gas cans, right?
That wasn't the purpose of the call.
Well, that was what was discussed during that call, correct?
I think so, yes.
You're saying you think so? Yes, correct? That's
Yes.
what you're saying. And so one of the things that you told him in discussing these gas cans was that you were going to take a trip, right?
Yes.
And that the purpose for the gas cans was that you could put gas in them, right?
Yes.
And the other thing that you told him was that the trip that you were going to make was going to be to Mesa, Arizona, right?
No.
You were here when he testified, correct?
Yes.
And he's somebody that you've had I guess, a long-term relationship with, correct?
Yes, about 4 years.
Pardon?
About 4 years we were in a relationship.
Right, and then even after that, you have had, if not a close friendship, you've had a friendship after the two of you split, correct?
It was more distant, but it was still a friendship.
Sure, and in fact, you felt comfortable, you still remembered his number, right? Telephone number, right?
Yes.
And you felt comfortable enough to ask him for a favor, right?
Certain favors, yes.
Well, that particular favor, you felt comfortable in asking him for that, right?
Which one? The gas cans?
Well, which other favor are we talking about? Are there more than one favor here that we've talked about?
I want to know what you're talking about.
No, I'm asking you. Do you remember that we started talking about gas cans? Do you remember that?
Yes.
That we've talked of nothing else other than gas cans so far. Is there anything else that you believe that we've talked about?
I wasn't sure, that's why I asked.
Ma'am, is there anything else that we have talked about?
I'm not sure, that's why I asked.
I'm asking you, is there anything else that has been posed to you other than this gas can issue involving Mr. Brewer?
Yes.
Objection, asked and answered, badgering.
Sustained.
Now, you have this conversation with him involving the gas cans. It is more than one conversation, isn't it?
I don't remember.
And there could be more than one conversation. Is what you're telling us, right?
Yes.
And are you saying you did not tell him that you were going to go to Mesa when you spoke to him?
That's right. I told him after.
I'm asking you, the question is this: isn't it true that before you went on the trip, you told him you were going to Mesa?
No, that is not true.
All right. Isn't it true that as part of one or another conversation that you had, you told him that you were going to go to Arizona to visit some friends?
No, I said Utah.
You didn't. I'm asking you whether or not it's true that you told him that you were going to Mesa to visit some friends before you took the trip.
No, I said Utah.
I'm not asking you what you said, am I?
Objection, Badger.
Overruled.
Yeah, I think you are.
You're thinking. My question to you is asking you what you told them. Is that what you think it is? Whether or not you told them that you were going to go to Utah? Do you think that that's what the question was?
No.
The question was, isn't it true, ma'am, that you discussed with Mr. Brewer before the trip that you took that you needed the gas cans to go and visit friends in Mesa, Arizona? What is your answer to that?
My answer is no, I told him Utah.
And I'm asking you whether or not you think I'm asking you what you told him. Am I asking you what you told him?
That's kind of my interpretation of it. It's a yes or no question.
It is a yes or no question, isn't it?
And I answered no 3 times, yes.
And you also added something 3 times, didn't you?
Yes, the truth.
Am I asking you whether you're telling the truth?
You have asked me that.
Am I asking you right now if you're telling the truth?
I don't know, are you?
Well, have you heard that question prior to you saying that?
Yes.
You heard that question immediately before I'm telling the truth. The prosecutor asking you if you were telling the truth, you heard the prosecutor say that.
Not immediately.
Pardon?
Not immediately.
So the answer is yes or no. Did you hear the question immediately before you gave the answer that you were telling the truth?
No, not immediately.
So you did have these conversations with Mr. Brewer, and you decided to get the gas cans. Why don't you just go and buy some gas cans?
They were expensive.
And when you say they were expensive, how much is a gas can?
I don't remember, but it wasn't in my budget for my travels.
And you wanted 2 of them, right?
I don't know, I guess whatever he had.
So if you would have had 6, you would have taken 6?
No, they wouldn't have fit.
And these gas cans, when you picked them up, where did you put them?
In the trunk.
In the back?
Yes.
So you rented this car, and this car had some floor mats, correct?
No, it did not.
So then you get into this car, and you pick it up, you go back to sleep, right?
Yes, back at my brother's house.
I didn't ask you where, did I?
No.
I asked you if you went back to sleep, right?
Yes.
So you went back to sleep, and at some point, you then started to go on your trip for reals, right?
Okay, yeah.
All right, and about what time was that?
I want to say late morning, but I'm not too sure.
And you then drove south till you got to the Monterey, California area, correct?
I stopped again and slept, and then continued driving south.
What did you say?
I stopped again and slept, and then I continued driving south.
Did anybody ask you whether or not you slept?
Well, you just asked me.
I asked you whether or not you slept. Is that what my question was?
Yes, you asked if I went to sleep.
No, I asked you when you started your trip, did you make it to Monterey, California? Do you remember me asking you that?
I remember you asking something like that, but not worded that way.
When you say something like that, again, it seems that you have a problem with your memory. Do you have a problem with your memory today?
Not in this particular case.
Okay, so after you woke up, after sleeping at your sister's house, did you begin your trip?
Yes.
And did you eventually make it to the Monterey, California area?
Yes.
And what time did you get there?
It was very, very late. I think it was even the 3rd in the morning because we had stopped in Santa Cruz first.
So you got there on the 3rd, you believe, but in any event, it was late, correct?
Yeah, it was past midnight, I think, by the time we got to Monterey.
And so in terms of miles, how many miles are we talking about?
From where to where?
From the place that you left your sister to Monterey, wherever it is that you went, and you arrived around midnight or after, or in the early morning hours of June 3rd.
Well, I'm not particularly sure. I'd say somewhere in the ballpark of 500 miles.
And so,
I know more by hours, not miles.
okay, how many hours then?
From Reading to Santa Cruz, it was approximately 6.5 to 7 hours.
And in Santa Cruz, did you meet anybody?
Yes,
And that's where you met Mr. McCartney, correct?
yes, and his roommate.
And did I ask you again if you met his roommate?
You asked if I met anybody.
No, I asked you if you met Mr. McCartney. Do you remember that question?
Yes, and I answered yes.
And so you met Mr. McCartney, and you spent the night at a place where he was living, right?
Yes.
And what time did you get up the next morning?
I don't remember, but it would have been in the morning.
I understand it was the morning. Would it have been really early, or would it not be so early in the morning?
It would have been before Jack had to go to school, so whatever time that was, it couldn't have been too late.
What time did Jack have to go to school?
I don't remember.
And so, did you have plans already to meet up with Mr. McCartney, or is it a situation where you got on the phone on the road, called him up, and said, hey, I'm coming down there, can we meet?
It was definitely beforehand because I was going to crash there.
So, when did you speak to him beforehand? Was it a week or so before? Was it days before you left? What was it?
I don't know. We spoke here and there. I don't know.
All right, and did Mr. McCartney go with you the next morning to meet with Mr. Brewer?
No.
So you did go over to Mr. Brewer's house, and one of the reasons that you went over was to talk to or see Jack, the son, right?
That was one of the reasons.
And you also had breakfast there, correct?
Yes.
And you also checked your email there, correct?
I think it was my MySpace
Pardon?
email. Yeah, what was my MySpace account?
Well, when you say that you checked your MySpace account, is your email included in the MySpace account?
There is an email system, but not my main email.
I'm asking if you checked when you checked your MySpace account, did you check any email in the MySpace account?
I don't remember.
Did you check, you mentioned that you had another email system. Did you check that other email system?
I don't remember. Probably not. I think it was just MySpace.
And what was the purpose for checking that, the MySpace account?
Hadn't done it in a few days, so.
And so you check that, and then at some point, you get some gas cans, right?
Yes.
And when in this whole sequence of events do you get the gas cans?
Sometime while I was visiting with him. I don't remember how it happened.
Was it before or after Jack left for school?
I don't remember.
And what color were the gas cans?
They were red
And where did you put them?
in the trunk.
And that would be in the back, correct?
Yes.
Where was your luggage?
In the trunk.
Same place with the same area as the gas cans?
Yes.
And how much time do you spend there with Mr. Brewer?
I don't know. I think it was somewhere like a half hour, it felt like. I don't really remember.
And then you leave, right?
Yes.
But you come back again, right?
Yes.
To return a remote, right?
Right.
What kind of remote are you returning?
It was for either his TV or his DVD player, I think.
How is it that it found its way into your car?
I don't know. I think that
Well, don't speculate. You don't know, right?
No, it was already with him. I drove away with it on accident. I don't know how I got it.
All right. And then after you returned it, you drove to Salinas, right?
Yes.
And in Salinas, you did a number of things, right?
Not really. I just did a few things.
Pardon?
I just did a few things.
Right. You did your nails, right?
Yes.
And you said it took quite a while, right?
I had to wait for a while. Yes.
In other words, the doing of the nails didn't take a long time. The fact that you probably didn't have an appointment is what took some time, right?
Yes. There are no appointments there.
And then you left Salinas and continued your trip, right? And this would be on the 3rd, right?
That's correct.
About what time was it?
It was afternoon, but I don't know what time.
You told us about the gas cans from Mr. Brewer, right?
That's right.
But you forgot to tell us something else, didn't you?
You haven't asked me yet.
Well, isn't it true that there was more than 2 gas cans involved here, right?
Yes.
And you testified on direct examination involving the gas cans, didn't you?
Yes.
And you never testified about a 3rd gas can, did you?
No.
And this 3rd gas can, you actually bought it in Salinas, didn't you?
Yes.
And you bought it from Walmart, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And now, not only do you have 2 5-gallon gas cans, you have another gas can. How many, what's the capacity of this one?
It was the same size. No, I think it was, I don't know, it was the same size, I think.
You think it was, so now you have a capacity of 15 gallons, right?
At that moment, I did.
Well, you're saying like at that moment. Did the size of these gas cans change so that it would go from a 15-gallon capacity down to a lesser capacity?
Objection. You can go to the bathroom.
This sustained the objection.
With regard to, you keep saying that at that point you had that capacity. Was there something involving these gas cans that would not allow you to fill them up to their capacity later on?
Yes, there was.
And what is that?
I returned the gas can.
You returned it back, right?
Yes.
So that you now have a capacity of still 10 gallons, right?
Yes.
Maximum, right?
Yes.
So then why is it, ma'am, that when you go to the ARCO, you fill up with gas, you remember that?
Yes.
And then you go inside, and exhibit number 237.012, do you see that there?
Yes.
That's a capacity of 10 gallons, right? Or approximately, it's 9.5494 gallons, right?
Yes.
And then 237.013, it's 2.77 gallons, right?
Where does it say that? Oh, yeah, I see that.
So you're saying that these gas cans then have a larger capacity now?
I don't know what the capacity was.
Well, you remember Mr. Brewer saying they were 5-gallon gas cans, right?
I don't know if he said that or not.
You were here when he testified, right?
I was physically here, yes. Sometimes I space out.
Pardon?
I was physically here, yes. Sometimes I space out.
And so you're saying that throughout the trial you may have spaced out and not paid attention to what's going on?
During other people's testimonies, sometimes my mind wanders.
So the answer is yes.
Yes.
And you don't remember then specifically what Mr. Brewer may have said. Is that what you're saying?
I remember some things he said. Almost all.
But not everything.
Not every single thing.
Well, 237.011. Do you see that it says ARCO and it's in Pasadena?
Yes.
Do you see the address there?
Yes.
What's the address? Read it for me.
3706 East Foothill Boulevard.
And the city and state?
Pasadena, California, 92553.
And it does talk about a debit account. You see that?
Yes.
Talks about a date of June 3rd, 2008, right?
Yes.
And a time of 8:42 p.m., right?
Yes.
And then it talks about being at pump number 2. Do you see that?
Yes.
And then it talks about the amount of gallons that are involved, right?
Yes.
8.301 gallons. And there's the price there, right?
Yes.
That is for you filling up the car, isn't it?
I don't know.
Well, you were there though, right?
Yes.
And this is first in the sequence at 8:42 p.m., right?
Yes.
And you don't know whether or not this is part of filling up the car with gas then?
I don't remember what order I filled
All
out.
right, well, you remember that we're talking about 2 5-gallon gas cans, right?
Yes.
5 plus 5 is 10, right?
That's right.
This is 8.301. Do you see that?
Yes.
So this is not the capacity, if you will, of the up to 10 gallons for those 2 gas cans, correct?
It has that capacity, so that's not correct. It's not the maximum capacity.
No, it isn't, right? So
That's
there's no
right.
reason to believe that this could be the gas cans. If you're going to take these gas cans, presumably you're going to fill them up to the top, right?
Objections, presuming something is not in evidence.
Restate your question.
You were taking those gas cans for a reason, right?
Yes.
And that was to have extra gas, right?
Originally it was.
Yes
so
or
that
no? Was it to have extra gas available to you?
At one point, yes. At another point, no.
Well, and if you want to have extra gas available to you, don't you want to have the maximum amount?
I guess.
Well, no, you were driving. You're the one that asked to borrow these gas cans. If you have let's just say 10 gallons of space available, and you want to make sure that you have enough gas, wouldn't you fill it up to approximately 10 gallons?
Objection, what's the relevancy of this? It's 8.3 gallons.
I don't know.
Ma'am, what's going on is that Exhibit 237.001 is you filling up that Ford Focus with gas, isn't it?
I don't remember what order I filled up.
And this was at 8:42 p.m., right?
Yes.
And you went and you pumped your own gas, didn't you?
Yes.
And then and you paid with a debit card. Do you see that?
Yes.
You had a MasterCard back then, right?
I don't remember what it was, MasterCard or Visa.
But you paid for that with a credit card or Visa or MasterCard, whatever it was, right?
Yes.
With regard to the gas that you purchased inside, which is 237.012, you paid cash, right?
That's right.
And cash is harder to track in terms of sales than a credit transaction. Wouldn't you agree?
Not if you save the receipt.
Not if you save your receipt. What if you don't save your receipt, ma'am? Wouldn't you agree that a cash transaction is harder to keep track of than a credit transaction?
Yes, I would agree with that.
And in this case, you initially said, I want to pay $40, right?
Yes.
And then it's the amount of gallons that you got for that was 9.594 gallons, correct?
Yes.
And that was the $40, right?
Yes.
Do you see the time there?
That would be 10:53.
Well, how about 8:46:50? If you see the 20:46:50, wouldn't that be 8:46:50?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. That's correct.
And that is 4 minutes after the transaction in 237.001. Do you see that?
Yes. Wait, what was the other time? I'm sorry.
There's 8:42.
Okay.
You see that?
Yes.
8:46:50. Do you see that?
Yes. I was sorry. I was looking at the other time on the top.
Do you see that right there?
Yes.
It's 8:46:50, right?
Okay.
So that's 4 minutes after the transaction. That's the debit transaction, right?
Yes.
And then you have 237.013. It's the same article, right?
Yes.
And this one is at what time?
This one is at, what time was it?
How about 8:53?
53, yes.
And that's 5 minutes later than the transaction involving the approximately 10 gallons of gas, right?
Yes.
And during that time, that 5 minutes, that would allow you to go from the inside out to your car again, wouldn't it? 5
Yes.
minutes. It was that close, correct?
Yes.
And the time span between Exhibit 237.001, which is 8:42, to the next one, which is 8:46, which is 4 minutes, that would give you time to go back between the car and the register or inside the store, correct?
Yes.
And so now, we know that at that particular gas station, you spent 237.011, I'm sorry. It's $35 there, right?
Yes.
And 6 cents, but let's leave the cents aside. And 237.012, that's $40. So far you spent $75 in gas, right?
Yes.
And then if you add from 237.013, if you add 9, because we're rounding up, you're now talking $84 in gas that you spent, right?
I don't know. I'm not good at math, but okay.
Assuming the math is correct,
Assuming the math is correct.
it's between $80 and $84 in gas that you spent, correct?
Yes.
And so you've now driven all the way down there, and one of the reasons that you told us on direct examination that you wanted these gas cans was that gas was cheaper in Arizona and Utah. Do you remember telling us that on direct?
No, I said Nevada and Utah.
All right, gas is cheaper in Nevada and Utah, right?
Yes.
You weren't filling up in Nevada or Utah, were you?
No.
You were filling up in California, right?
Yes.
Where the gas is as expensive there as it is probably throughout the state, right?
No.
Or well, it was expensive in California, isn't it?
More than Nevada and Utah, yes.
And so you had actually, and California is kind of a progressive state in the sense that it has gas stations almost everywhere, doesn't it?
Injection foundation, relevance.
Restate your question.
On your travels on that date, you went from the Monterey area down to Salinas. Any trouble seeing any gas stations there?
No.
From Salinas all the way down to Pasadena. Any problem seeing any gas stations there?
No.
So it seems that your fears about gas in California were not well founded then, right? There was gas in places that you were traveling in California, right?
I didn't have any fears in California of that, so no.
You had fears somewhere else, correct?
Yes.
Arizona, for example, right?
No.
Well, you did end up going through Arizona, right?
Yes, I did.
And so, presumably, is that where the fears were, in Arizona?
No, I'd driven that highway many times. I knew where the gas stations were there.
So you didn't really have a need for gas if you're going to drive through Arizona then, right?
No, that's right, yes.
Pardon?
That's right.
And you were telling us, though, that approximately every 150 to 170 miles, your car was running out of gas. Do you remember telling us that?
150 to 170 miles?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't remember saying that.
Well, do you remember that you said that you had problems with that your Ford Focus had problems with gas, that it was using too much gas on direct examination?
I remember running out quickly, yes.
Well, you told us that this car, the Ford Focus, was using an inordinate amount of gas, correct?
No, that wasn't my thought.
Well,
It ran out of gas quickly.
you told us that from Pasadena, then you filled up at Desert Center, right?
Yes.
That's approximately 170 miles down the road, right?
I don't know.
Well, you drove it.
It sounds right.
Injection foundation, she asked, man.
Sustain, ask another question.
And after that, you then said that you drove out to Buckeye and you filled up there, right?
Yes.
That's approximately another 170 miles, right?
Injection foundation.
Overruled.
I guess.
Well, you did drive that, though. You
Yes,
did
I
tell
did.
us that, right?
Yes.
And you told us that both of those times you filled up, right?
Yes.
And you filled that car up with 12 gallons of gas approximately every time, right?
Whatever it would have been, I filled up, I think.
Well, if you were running low, we've already seen the capacity, then it would be approximately 12 gallons, wouldn't it?
Injection
Yes,
foundation,
I guess.
she was on empty.
Sustained.
Ma'am, you said that you filled up in Winnemucca, right? And your car was low, ran out of gas, right?
It did not run out of gas. I was low.
Oh, so it didn't run out of gas, and yet you were able to put over 12 gallons worth of gas in Winnemucca, correct?
That's correct.
And so if you are running low on gas in Desert Center, that would mean that you would put approximately 12 gallons worth of gas, right?
Approximately.
And then from that point over to Buckeye, you said you put gas into the car again, right?
Yes, I did.
So that would mean that you would put another 12 gallons worth of gas in the car if it was running low,
Objection, ask and answer.
based on the previous computations.
Overruled. You may answer.
If you base it on those computations, but I stopped in Buckeye because the Shell station there always had cheap gas.
I'm not asking you whether or not it had cheap gas, right? Am I?
No.
Do you remember that on direct examination, the way you processed this was that, oh, this car used an inordinate or a lot of gas. Do you remember telling us that portion?
Yes.
And that as a consequence of that, do you remember telling us that you stopped at Desert Center, right? And
Yes,
put gas in it.
I did.
And then you also said, and because of this problem that it was running low on gas, you also stopped in Buckeye, right? You told us that,
Yes,
right?
I did.
So if this car is running low on gas, that means that it's close to empty, right?
Yes.
And so that would mean that if it's close to empty, it would be around 12 gallons that you put at Desert Center inside the car tank, right?
Approximately.
Approximately.
Yes.
And then it would be another 12 gallons worth of gas there at Buckeye, right?
Presumably, yes.
Well, given the computations that we have going. And then you made your way over to Mesa, right?
Yes, I did.
And how long did it take you to get to Mesa?
That hour of the morning, not long because there was no traffic.
And how much gas did you use?
I don't know.
And all the while you have these gas cans full of gas, right?
Yes, I did.
And because you filled up in Pasadena, correct?
Yes.
And where did you put these gas cans?
They were in my trunk.
And again, in the back part of the trunk?
Yes.
And you maintain that this third gas can, that you did not have a third gas can then, right?
No, not at that time.
When you keep saying that at that time, I'm asking after Salinas, you did not have that gas can, right?
That's correct.
Take a look at 237.008. Do you see that? Do you see the receipt?
Yes.
And at the very bottom it says 5G. That actually means 5 gallons, right?
Yes.
Caro Carb is the type of gas can, correct?
Yes.
And it's $12.96, right?
Yes.
Ma'am, at the time that you bought it, one of the things that you were telling us was that you were very financially strapped, for lack of a better phrase, right?
That's right.
So if you want to save on gas, which is on the price of gas, which is what you say is your ultimate goal, right?
At the time that I wanted gas cans, that was my ultimate goal.
Right. So that was your ultimate goal at the time that you talked to Mr. Brewer, right?
That's correct.
So if you want to save on gas, why is it then that you're willing to pay $13 for a gas can, which would increase, if you will, the price of travel
Well,
by $13?
that wasn't a calculation that I made when I bought it. That's why I returned it.
Do you have the receipt that you took it back?
I didn't get a receipt.
So Walmart did not give you any documentation whatsoever when you took that gas can back?
I don't think so.
Well, I'm asking you just whether, I just want to be as clear as we can about this. You believe that when you took that gas can back, Walmart did not give you any written document evidencing that or showing that?
I don't recall having to fill anything out or any documents regarding that, no.
You weren't even given a printout or anything at all, right?
I'm not saying that, I'm just saying I don't remember.
And you would agree, though, that if you bought the gas can and it was approximately $13, it would not make any financial sense if you were looking to save for gas, correct?
I do agree with that.
And the other thing is, if you're looking to save for gas and you're trying to do this, wouldn't it have made more sense to have filled up in Pasadena, then driven up to Nevada, if that's where you were going, and once you get to Nevada, fill up the gas cans? Wouldn't it have made more sense then?
Yes, it would have if that were my goal.
Well, your goal at that time when you were filling up was to travel up to Utah. Didn't you tell us that?
Yes.
So you didn't do that though, right?
I did not end up going directly to Utah.
I'm not saying whether or not you ended up going directly to Utah. At the time that you filled up these cans, your plans were to go to Utah, weren't they?
Yes.
Because of the time on there, correct?
Yes,
Previously, you had told us that you didn't speak to Mr. Alexander until after that, right?
that's right.
In fact, you were at getting some coffee or something, right? At Starbucks, something like that, or some drink at Starbucks, correct?
Yeah, strawberry drink.
Right, at Starbucks, right?
Yes.
And so, if you are going to go from Pasadena to Nevada, you can make it on a tank of gas, can't you?
Cause for speculation.
Overruled.
Is that true?
I've never driven that freeway, so, I mean, this is the USA, so I would guess yes, but I've never driven that road, especially not at night, so.
You didn't think that perhaps all that way from Pasadena to Las Vegas, there wouldn't be a gas station? Did you believe that that was the case?
No, I didn't believe that was the case.
So if you really are trying to save on gas, you would have continued driving through California and filling up in California until you got to Nevada. And then you would have been able to purchase the cheaper gas, right?
That was a long question. I'm sorry, will you say it again?
Well, it would have made more financial sense for you to keep driving from Pasadena northbound, northeastbound, until you got closer to the border, right?
That's right.
And then when you got to Nevada, then it would have made more sense to fill the gas cans, right?
Financially, yes.
And that was your goal, correct?
At the time I got the gas cans, that was my goal.
Your goal changed, apparently, is what you're saying, right?
I still wanted to save gas, but my priority changed.
Okay, and so with regard to exhibit number 237.012, this is the one that's approximately 10 gallons. And then 237.013, it's approximately 2.7 gallons. You see that?
Yes,
You were the person that actually put the gas into the gas cans, right?
that's right.
And you know that one of the gas cans was 5 gallons, right?
Yes.
The other was 5 gallons, right?
Well, I believe it was because that's what Daryl said.
They were the same size, weren't they?
They were the same size.
And so if that's the capacity, the most that each can carry is about 10 gallons, right?
Yes, I guess.
Yet you were able to put 10 gallons plus 2.774 gallons in containers, weren't you?
No, I think the other one, the 10-gallon, was probably the car.
Was what?
Probably the car, I would guess.
What did you, tard?
Car.
So you're saying that this one right here, 237.012, went to the car.
That's very possible.
And you're saying that this one right here, 237.001, went into the gas can. Is that what you're saying?
That sounds right.
Okay. Why are you breaking it up then, this purchase? If you're going to put 10 gallons in the gas can, what you're saying is you went to the pump, went to the gas cans, and you put 8.3 gallons worth of gas in it, right?
Yes.
Then you made that debit transaction, right?
Yes.
And then you put gas in the car, according to you, right
Yes.
here, at 8:46, right?
Right.
You went inside to do that, right?
I think so, yes.
Well, no, it says initial payment. You can't pay at the pump, right?
Sometimes you can, but I don't
Well,
know
you
about a
think you can pay at the
prepayment.
pump there, right?
If I remember correctly, I don't know about ARCO, so, I mean, I prepaid is what I know.
Yeah, you did prepay, and you prepaid inside, didn't you?
Objection, asked and answered.
Sustained.
Well, ma'am, let's just get to the bottom of this. You say that you don't know. It's 237.012. Do you see right here?
Oh, yes, clerk.
Well, let me just ask the question. It's clerk, 2525, right?
Yes.
That means you went inside, right?
Objection.
I don't know. I would guess, says the clerk.
Overruled.
Well, did you go inside?
I know I went inside at one point, but I don't know which payment I went inside for, so.
And 237.011, you see a clerk there anywhere?
No.
And then, 4 minutes later, I'm sorry, it's 2046 and 2053, which is 7 minutes later. So 237.012, you see the time there, right? 2046, right?
Yes.
And then 237.013 is 2053. You see that?
Yes.
7 minutes later, you go back inside, right?
7 minutes later from
7 minutes later.
the 8 gallons?
From
Is that what you're saying?
2046. I'm just looking at times here.
Okay.
Well, no, do you have any reason to doubt the authenticity of these records?
No.
So 7 minutes later, first of all, you go in at 8:46 and you pay for the gas, right? With cash.
Yes.
Then, you then go back and you pay for more gas, right?
Yes.
And then, before that, at 8:42, you pay for more gas again, right?
Yes.
You really, what you're doing, man, is actually filling up the 2 5-gallon gas cans first. Aren't you doing that first?
I don't know if I filled them, but I don't remember what order I did.
And after you filled that, you filled up the 3rd gas can, didn't you?
I didn't have a 3rd.
And before you did all of that, you put gas in your car, right?
I don't remember what order I did it.
After that, well, still in Pasadena, you decided to go to a Starbucks, right?
Yes.
And that was around 9 o'clock in the evening, right?
Somewhere that sounds right.
Well, that's what you told us. Can you give us a closer approximation?
No.
So you go there, and one of the things that you said is that you've got a strawberry drink, something like that?
Yeah, strawberry frappuccino.
And while you were there, you call Mr. Burns, right?
I don't know if I called him from Starbucks, but I know we talked a few times that night.
And the plan was still for you to go up to Utah, right?
Yes.
And if you were to leave Pasadena at about the time that you said that you were going to leave, you would have arrived up in the West Jordan area at about maybe 10, 11 o'clock the next morning, right?
If I drove straight through, I think that's right.
It's about a 12-hour drive, I think is what you testified to, right?
That sounds right, yes.
But in talking to Mr. Burns, you never told him that you were not going to go straight to Utah, did you?
Judge, I have a question about one I did.
Overruled.
No, because I was going to go.
So the answer is no, you didn't, right?
No, I didn't tell him that.
In any conversations prior to arriving in Mesa that night or the next morning, you never communicated to Mr. Burns that you were going to take a detour, did you?
No, I didn't.
And you never contacted Matthew McCartney to tell him that you were going to take a detour, right?
I attempted to contact him before I decided to drive out to Mesa, I think.
Answer is you didn't let him know, though, right?
No, he didn't answer.
The bottom line is he didn't know either, right?
That's right.
And Mr. Brewer, you didn't call to let him know that either, right?
I think I called him too. I called both of them because I couldn't find my car charger or my phone charger. It was a phone charger.
You called both of them, but you didn't let either of them know of the change in plans, correct?
Say that again?
You called both of them at whatever time, but you never informed either of them of the change in plans, your supposed change in plans, right?
Yes, that's correct.
One of the things that you took on this trip, of course, was the gas cans, right?
Yes, I did.
Right. The other thing that you took when you took this trip was that you also brought a gun, didn't you?
Absolutely not.
Well, do you remember having a conversation on June 10th of 2008 with Detective Flores of the Mesa Police Department?
Yes, I do.
You initiated that call by calling him first, right?
Yes, I did.
And after you called him, he called you back, right?
Yes.
And I think previously you said, well, I called him to sort of find out what was going on with the investigation, right?
Yes.
That was one of the reasons, right?
Yes.
You wanted to know what was going on, right?
Yes.
And during that conversation, you and he discussed a number of things, right?
Yes.
And during that time that you were talking to him, part of the purpose was, at that time, again, not only to get information, but the way you put it was to also sort of cast suspicion away from you, right?
Yes, for the time being. That was
Well, that phone call, one of your objectives was to get the detective to look somewhere else, right? Not you.
Yes.
And we know the reasons, but some of the reasons was that you didn't want to be incarcerated or be involved in the prosecution for this particular killing, right?
That would be accurate.
And so what you were doing, part of this telephone call, was in your best interest. In other words, you were trying to do things that benefited you, right?
I wouldn't put it like that.
Well, you were doing things so that he wouldn't see you as a suspect, right?
Yes.
So if he didn't see you as a suspect, that would benefit you, right?
I guess it depends on how you look at it.
Well, no, I'm asking how you would look at it. If you don't want him to think of you as a suspect, that's the goal, that's part of the goal, right?
That was part of the goal for the call.
Right,
Yes.
that was part of the goal for the call. And so you wouldn't say anything, at least in a planned way, you wouldn't say anything that would make it look like you were a suspect, right?
I would attempt to not say anything.
Right, and it would be based on the world of knowledge that you had at that time, right?
I guess.
Well, no, you wouldn't call up and say, oh, I was the person that killed Mr. Alexander. You're not calling to say that, right?
No, I wasn't ready to say that.
No. And you're not calling to say, you know, you really should look at this part of the desert because that's where I threw the gun, right?
No.
No, what you were trying to do is you were trying to say, look, I'm giving you all the information that I know so that you can look at somebody else, right?
I wasn't thinking of somebody else, just I was thinking not me.
All right, I'm giving you this information so that you don't look towards me, right?
Yes.
So when you are doing that, you wouldn't purposely say things to hurt you, would you? Hurt your case.
I don't know.
You think that you would purposely say things to hurt your case?
Probably not. That wasn't really my goal.
No, that wasn't your goal, so you really wouldn't, would you? But you, right?
I didn't consider it my case, but no, I wouldn't say things intentionally to hurt myself.
Okay, but you and he did talk about whether or not Mr. Alexander owned a gun, right?
Yes, I did.
And at that time, you did not know that you were being tape recorded, do you?
I assumed I was.
You assumed it was, but you didn't know, right?
I was told it was.
Who told you that it was? Did the detective tell you in advance?
An attorney told me.
In advance of you making the call?
Yes.
So you knew before you made the call that your conversation with the detective was going to be taped, right?
They said they are, yes.
So all the more reason then, knowing that it's going to be taped, it's all the more reason for you to be on the lookout, if you will, or be careful to not say anything to, incriminate you.
Yes.
Right? And so knowing that, you still made a statement about a gun, didn't you?
Yes, I didn't follow the attorney's counsel.
I'm not asking you whether or not you followed anybody's counsel. I'm just asking you, ma'am, whether or not you made a statement involving a gun.
Yes, I did.
And it isn't like Detective Flores came looking for you, right?
You mean physically?
No, called you. He never called you first, right?
First, no, he didn't.
No, you were the one that actually sought him out, right?
Yes.
And he returned your call, right?
Yes.
At that point, for all you knew, he didn't even know that you even existed, for all you knew, right?
No, I already knew that he knew.
Well, how could you possibly know what he knows, ma'am?
I was going off of hearsay.
Well, but you don't really, it's what people tell you, but you don't know what he really knows, do you?
Do I know what he knows inside his head? No, I don't. But I knew that he knew about my name.
No, that's what you believe, but you don't know that, right?
That's what I had a strong belief.
All right, and so you made a statement, and that statement is Exhibit 273. Let's listen to it.
Can I call you again if I need more information or if I have another question? Do you have any questions I can answer for you?
Yeah, do you know when all this happened? I mean, I got a call last night, but is there any word on...
Sometime between Thursday and last night. We're not sure yet. We haven't pinpointed yet.
And you said that maybe multiple people, because he's a big guy. Maybe you can't talk about this, but was there like any kind of weapons used, or was there a gun? Was there?
I can't say what type of weapon was used, but yeah, I'm guessing there was a weapon used by the type of injuries that were left behind. Do you know of him having any weapons at all in the house?
His two fists.
That's it?
Really?
No.
Yeah.
Okay. No handguns or rifles or...
No, he wasn't one to keep any of that I knew of.
Fighting knives or anything like that?
No, he was more into like wrestling and UFC, and he had he said he had just bought a punching bag, and he's like, I love punching the crap out of my punching bag,
that's what...
That was you on that recording, correct?
Correct.
And that was you talking to the detective about whether or not Mr. Alexander had any handguns, right?
That's right.
And that was you saying at that time, the day after you were notified that his body was discovered, that's you saying, no, he doesn't have any guns, right?
Yes, that's right.
And that was the truth, wasn't it?
No, that wasn't the truth.
Are you saying that you lied to him again?
Yes.
So whenever it doesn't suit you, it's a lie, right?
That's not true.
Well, let's review. When you spoke to him back then in June 10th of 2008, you talked about a lot of other things, right? You talked about what was going on with the case, right?
What little he could tell me, yes.
And what little you could tell him, right?
Yes.
You talked about your relationship with Mr. Alexander, right?
Somewhat, yes.
Right.
We didn't get into a lot of detail.
Right. You talked about potentially when his body was found, right? Or when it happened, right?
Yes.
And it's clear from what the detective was saying that at that point, he didn't even know when the killing had occurred, right?
He gave a time range.
Actually, he said Thursday. Do you remember him saying Thursday?
Yes.
It wasn't Thursday that it happened, right?
That's correct.
So when he said Thursday, you knew he was wrong, right?
I thought he was lying, but yeah.
Well, but you knew that was wrong, correct?
I knew that was not true.
You had all the cards when you called, or you had all the information when you called the detective. Isn't that true?
Barring my memory gaps, what I knew, yeah, I had information.
You knew that you had been the person that had killed him. You knew that, right?
Yeah.
You know that you had been there on June 4th, right?
Yes.
You know what had happened when you arrived there, right?
Yes.
So you knew all of that when you were talking to the detective there, right?
That's right.
And one of the things that you didn't know at that particular time was how the case was going to eventually unfold, how matters were eventually going to unfold, right?
Well, I had a good idea, just
Well,
details.
you're
no.
saying you had a good idea, but you're not a prognosticator of the future, are you?
No.
No one is, right?
I guess not. I don't know.
And so you really didn't know how things were going to unfold, so at that point you didn't know what was going to be important, right?
I wasn't thinking along those lines.
Well, you said you had a goal to point the investigation away from you, right? That was one goal, right?
For the time being, yes.
And then on the 15th of July, when they spoke to you, you said you weren't even there, right?
Yes, I did.
And then on the 16th, you said it was some other people that, a man and a woman that had come in and done it, right?
That's correct.
And for the longest time, that's what you maintained, right? For a couple of years, right?
Yes.
So the point being that back then, you didn't know what your defense was going to be back on June 10th of 2008 when you made that comment.
I don't really know what you mean by that.
Well, you didn't know it was going to be important back then in 2008, this issue involving the gun, and that's why when he asked you about it, you said no, he doesn't have any guns, because it wasn't important at that point because you couldn't foresee the future.
That's not why I said that.
Well, you said it though, right?
Yes, I did.
And there was no indication that, for example, that it was a lack of sophistication on your part in saying that.
It was a calculated statement.
It was a calculated statement, wasn't it?
Yes.
And it wasn't a situation where it was a technique by the police officer, was it?
Objection calls for speculation. Yes, it can.
Sustained.
Well, one of the things that were you here when Detective Flores testified?
Yes.
And the issue of techniques was discussed, correct?
Yes.
At that time, when you called him, you were the person that was actually, for lack of a better term, running the conversation.
I wouldn't.
Calls for speculation again regarding techniques.
Overruled.
I wouldn't say I was running the conversation.
You could have stopped that at any time, right?
Yes.
If we compare it to July 15th, on July 15th, you couldn't have walked out, right?
I could have stopped the conversation, but not walked out.
Right, you could have stopped it, but you could have, whereas in this case, not only could you have stopped the conversation, but you could have walked and done whatever it is that you wanted, right?
That day, yes.
Right, and that's the day that we're talking about, right?
Yes.
And if you would have wanted to ask him more questions, it's clear that he would have talked to you more, right?
Yes.
And on that date, on June 10th of 2008, if you would have wanted to tell him that you knew more about it, he would have listened to you, wouldn't he?
Yes.
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Do you think, ma'am, that if, in your opinion, that you, based on what you feel about the conversation, do you feel that if you were going to tell Officer Flores about what you knew had happened on June 4th, do you think that you would have been stopped from talking?
No, I don't think so.
Right, he would have listened to you, right?
Yes.
Yet you made that particular statement on that day, right?
Yes.
And it's because it is the truth, right?
No, it's not the truth.
You and Mr. Alexander never went shooting any guns, right?
No.
And you never saw Mr. Alexander with that gun in his hand, ever, did you? Any gun in his hand, right?
That's not true.
So you did see him with guns in his hand when you were with him.
At one time I did, yes.
And were the guns his?
It was not guns plural, it was one gun, and it was his.
So he had a gun back then?
Yes.
When was this?
I discovered it in the fall 2007.
No. I'm asking in terms of Mr. Alexander being the owner of a gun. When do you say that you knew he was the owner of a gun?
The fall 2007.
Is this the gun that we're talking about that you claim was used in the shooting?
It is the one.
That's what you claim, right?
Yes.
And with regard to that particular gun, you said that you supposedly found it somewhere. Where was the ammunition for it?
Inside the gun.
Inside where?
I guess it was inside the gun.
Do you even know if it was loaded?
He told me it was not loaded. But
So you don't even know if it was loaded, and you claim that he told you it wasn't loaded, right?
in the fall when I found it, he said it was not loaded.
Okay, so you believe it's not loaded, and you haven't received any statements to the contrary, right?
No, he took it one night when he was...
So you haven't received any statements to the contrary, right?
From him, I did receive statements to the contrary.
But knowing that then, according to you, now you say that he had a gun in 2007 You got on the phone and you said, no, Mr. Alexander didn't have any weapons. Or no, any guns. You said that specifically, right?
Yes.
And now you come in and you tell us that, yes, he does have guns. Or at least one gun, right?
At least one that yeah.
Right. Your grandfather also had guns, didn't he?
Yes, he had rifles and shotguns.
And he also had smaller guns too, didn't he?
I don't think so. Not plural.
Okay, he had a small gun then, right?
I don't know what it was.
Well, do you remember?
How small it was.
Pardon?
I don't know how small it was.
Well, was it one of those big long ones with the big long barrel?
Those are the only kinds I'd ever seen.
Right, so when you spoke to the detective about the gun that could have possibly been taken in the burglary, you indicated that it was a toy gun. Do you remember telling him that it looked like a toy gun?
No, I indicated that's what my grandfather said.
Right, and do you have any reason to doubt your grandfather's word?
No.
So, the gun that was taken, there was a burglary of the house you were staying at back on May 28th of 2008, wasn't there?
Yes.
And during that burglary, there were certain things that were taken from your room, right?
I think only, yeah, that's
What
true.
was taken from your room? What is it that you reported that was taken?
$10 and $20 bill.
So there was a total of $30 that were taken, right?
Yes. Yes.
There wasn't, your laptop wasn't taken, right?
No, my laptop was with me.
Well, I thought, do you remember that you actually told the police officers that you were pretty lucky because your laptop was in a hamper sort of thing and the clothes were covering it and it had not been stolen? Do you remember telling that to the officers?
No, I remember there was a discussion regarding the laptop, and I told him I was lucky that I had it with me because normally I keep it in this hamper.
You were here when the officer that went out there testified, right?
Yes.
And you looked at the photographs, right?
Yes.
And so you're saying that you actually had the laptop with you, right?
Yes.
And you were driving around with this laptop, according
Yes.
to you,
It
right?
goes everywhere with me, yes.
So you took it everywhere, you didn't leave it behind, right?
That's correct.
And nothing else was taken from your room, right?
That I noticed, yes.
Well, the officers gave you plenty of time to look around, right?
After they were done, like with their doing what they do, yeah, I looked around.
You're saying that they didn't give you an opportunity to go into your room to see what was missing in order to report it? Is that what you're saying?
That's not what I'm saying.
So they did allow you to go into the rooms then, into the room
Yes.
to look. And you were there until approximately 1 o'clock in the afternoon, right?
No.
So you were there later?
What do you mean by that?
I mean, were you there later than 1 o'clock?
No.
So you were there at 1 o'clock then, right?
I was there at 1 o'clock, but I wasn't there like all day the way you asked.
Right. You were there approximately at 1 o'clock, right?
Yes, my sister and I.
And before but when the detective or the officer testified, was there ever a mention of your sister while you were here?
I don't remember if he asked me or not. If he.
No. When the officer from Wairika testified, was there ever a mention of your sister?
Oh, when he testified, no, I don't think so.
Not at all, right?
No.
In fact, what happened was that you were out of the house and you were called to respond there, right?
I think I was. There was a voicemail left, yes.
But you were called in any event, right?
Yes.
And you indicated to the police that you had been there, the last one to be there, at 1 o'clock, right?
Yes.
And you actually came back sometime after 3 o'clock, right?
I don't remember what time I came back. I just came back as soon as my sister checked her voicemail.
And I know that, so if he said 3 o'clock, then you would have no quibble with it, right?
Sure. No quibble.
Right. And you heard what items were taken, including a .25 caliber handgun. You heard that, right?
Yes, I heard that.
And you also indicated to the detective that the .25 caliber handgun that your grandfather had, according to him, was like a toy gun, right?
Yes.
And at that time, you had a purse, right?
Yes, I did.
And in fact, this is what you carried your items in, right?
Yes.
And this purse, this toy gun purse, could have fit in your purse, right?
I don't know. I've never seen it.
So, how about the gun that you used to kill Mr. Alexander? How big was that gun?
It wasn't very big.
Looked like a toy gun, right?
It looked like a real gun to me.
Well, and it could fit in your purse, couldn't it?
If I removed some other items, it would fit.
So the answer is yes, it could fit in your purse, right?
Yes.
So this occurred on May 28th of 2008, shortly before you left on your trip, right?
The burglary, yes.
And this is during the time, 10 days after you've had this telephone conversation with Mr. Alexander, right?
10 days after what conversation?
The sex conversation that you had on the telephone, which was on the
It would have been
18 days, I'm sorry.
Yes.
So it's 18 days later, right?
Yes.
And so you are still having conversations with Mr. Alexander, correct?
Yes.
And you indicate that, well, I really wasn't going to go visit him, right?
That was not the plan when I hit the road.
Right, that's what you said. That was not the plan to go down there. Yet, when you get to Southern California, you're now at the Starbucks, right?
Yes.
And you're at the Starbucks, and you are sitting around drinking your strawberry frappuccino, right?
No, I just went in and then came out.
Okay, and in the time that it took for you to go in and come out, something happened to your car, according to you, right?
Yes.
There was another series of coincidences here,
Well,
right?
I think it was that time that that happened.
Well, no, that's what you sort of indicated on direct examination, that that's when you think it happened, right?
Yes.
How long were you inside of Starbucks?
I'd say 5 to 10 minutes. I used the restroom. There was a long line, and then after I got my drink, I waited for it to be made, and then I went back out to my car
Right.
to get on the road.
And according to you, then you came out to your car, right?
Yes.
And when you came out to your car, you indicated that there were some skaters there, right?
Yes.
And about what time of the day was that?
It was at night.
So what time at night?
I don't know. It
Was
was,
this-
I don't know, sometime between 9 and 10. I don't know. It wasn't too late, but it was at night.
And while you're there, when you come out, you see that there are these skaters laughing near your car, correct?
Not like laughing loud, just kind of snickering
So they were snickering near your car, right?
as they were skating away from my car.
Right. And there were other cars in the parking lot, right?
Yes.
And it was a pavement kind of parking lot, right?
Yes.
It wasn't dirt or anything like that. And one of the things that you notice when you get into your car is that you see something in front of you, right?
Yes.
And you decide to investigate, right?
Yes.
And were you pulled in, ma'am?
Yes. I was pulled in forward.
You were pulled in forward and there was a sidewalk in front of you?
The sidewalk wasn't directly in front of me, but there was a curb.
So there was a curb and your bumper's right next or in front of that, right?
That's right.
And you're coming out from the Starbucks, which is presumably on the sidewalk, which is what you're calling the curb, right?
No, but the Starbucks would have been behind and to the right of the vehicle.
Okay. So there was this curb there, and you see these individuals. How many were they?
I think there were 3.
And you then, is it well lit? This area, is it well lit?
There are lights in the parking lot.
And you go and you get in your car and you turn the car on and you're getting ready to leave, right?
That's right.
And as you get ready to leave, you turn your lights on, right?
Yes.
And as you turn your lights on, something catches your eye, right?
Not till I began to back out.
Okay, so you begin to back out and something catches your eye, right?
Yes.
Why do you care that something's out in front of you if you don't know anything about your license plate? Why would you even care?
Because it was a reflector. It was reflective, and I just kind of put the two together, like, maybe I should check what that is real quick before I hit the road.
And when you're saying it's a reflector, are you talking about the registration tags that they put on the back of, or on the license plates?
No.
What kind of reflector are you talking about then?
It was kind of like it just lit up more, like it reflected a lot more than anything else around it. The pavement was dull. It was lit, but like by my headlights, but not like this thing that was bright.
And it was flat though, right?
It was just a flash, so
No. The object was flat, correct?
I didn't see until I got out that it was a flat license plate.
So when you're in a car, you don't even know it's a license plate, right?
No, not till I get out to investigate.
So that means that as you're backing up, you see this something that catches your eye, right?
Yes.
And it's about 9 or 10 o'clock at night, right?
Yes.
And you decide to go look at it, right?
Yes.
And so you look at it and you decide it's a license plate, right?
Yes.
Well, ma'am, why take it?
Because I looked right at, well, I pulled back in, turned my car off, and then I looked at my license plate, it had bugs all over the front, minus where the license plate was, and I had just driven some 500-600 miles from Wairika, or
Right.
Reading, and then the license plate that I was holding had a
Right.
ton of bugs of the same kind of like
Sure.
amount. So
Right.
I just kind of threw it in my car and left.
Right. But you never thought to compare it to the one in the back, did you?
No.
In other words, you're taking a license plate that you have no idea whether or not it belongs to you, right?
No, I have an idea.
Well, wait a minute. You didn't check it with the one in the back?
No.
And license plates have numbers and letters on them, right?
Yes.
This one had numbers and letters on it, right?
Yes.
It could be that it belonged to somebody else, right?
That's possible.
Sure it was, because you didn't take the time, according to you, to go to the back to see whether or not it matched, right?
No.
And so what you do is, potentially, without knowing what it's about, you grab it, right?
I had an idea of what it's about, so I can't say that I didn't know.
Well, you grab it, right?
Yes.
You take it without checking.
Yes.
And then you put it in the car, right?
Yes.
You put it in the back seat of the car, right?
No, I think it was in the front floorboard.
So you put it in the front seat of the car, right?
The floorboard.
The floorboard.
Yes.
This dirty license plate that has all these bugs on it, right?
Yes.
You decide to go ahead and take it anyway, right?
Yes.
And did it ever occur to you to investigate the license plate in the back to see whether or not it matched?
Not right then. I was more concerned about getting in my car and locking the doors.
Pardon?
I was more concerned about getting in my car and locking the doors.
Because you were concerned for your safety, right?
Somewhat, yes.
Well, if you're concerned for your safety, why are you getting out to go check on something that is just shining there?
Well, because I didn't know, I wasn't concerned until I realized that that had happened, so.
Well, no, but if you're concerned for your safety, why are you getting out and exposing yourself?
I didn't get out after the concern arose.
Overruled. Ms. Harris, when there's an objection, stop speaking until the court rules.
Okay.
You may continue.
I didn't
If
get
you're-
out until the concern
Let me
arose.
ask it again. If you are afraid for, you told us that you were afraid.
Can she answer the question before he interjects?
Restate your question.
You indicated that you were afraid for your safety. That's why you didn't check the front license plate, the license plate that you found with the one in the back, right?
No, I indicated that getting in the car and locking the doors was what was on my mind. Checking it with the back didn't occur to me.
But I asked you about it, and just now you said, well, I got in the car, I locked the doors, and I was sort of in a hurry to do that because you were worried about your safety. You said that, right?
It was a concern. I wasn't
Right.
like scared or anything, but it was a concern.
Right. It was such a concern that, well, he didn't usually have a knife in his bedroom, correct?
Objection calls for speculation.
Overruled.
To my knowledge, that's correct. He never did.
Right. And this would be the first time that you ever saw that he had a knife in his bedroom, right?
That I saw, yes.
And so where did he cut the rope? Not what on the rope, not where on the rope, but where in the
He
house?
cut it in the bathroom.
So he did it in the bathroom. Did he come into the bedroom with the knife, or did he leave it in the bathroom?
I don't remember. I don't remember where he put the knife when he was done.
Do you remember telling Richard Samuels that he actually brought the knife back and left it on the nightstand so that he could cut the rope off of your wrists?
I remember speculating about where the knife was left, but he didn't need to cut the rope.
You didn't tell Mr. Richard Samuels that the knife was used to cut the rope from your wrists.
Not from my wrist, but to cut the rope, yes.
And you don't remember that it was on the nightstand, right?
I don't remember exactly where it was.
Do you remember telling Richard Samuels that when this attack was going on, that you remembered that the knife was near the nightstand and because it had been used to cut the rope? Do you remember anything like that?
I remember speculating about that.
Well, are you sure that you said, I'm speculating that the knife was used to cut the rope?
I'm sure I did not say speculating when I was speculating.
Well, let me ask it directly then. Are you saying that the knife was used to cut the rope from your wrists or not?
Not from my wrists, but to cut it, yes.
I understand to cut it. I asked wrists.
I didn't
From
know.
your wrist, was the knife used to cut the rope from your wrists?
No.
Do you remember somebody by the name of Cheryl Karp?
Yes.
And you discussed the same incident with her, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
So, again, are you sure that the knife was not necessary to cut the rope from your wrists?
I'm sure it wasn't necessary to cut it off of me.
And not only was it not necessary, that's not what was done, correct?
Cut off?
Right.
That's correct.
You slipped your hands out, correct?
Yes.
And then you continued with the activities of the day, correct?
Yes.
Whatever it was that you guys were going to do, correct?
Yes.
You keep talking about a movie, and there's an indication perhaps that there's a movie that was made, but it wasn't made, if there was one, with Mr. Alexander's camera, correct?
I don't remember which camera we used because mine did movies too. And his was kind of new to me, so it was a little bit hard to figure out all of the features on it.
Do you remember testifying on direct examination about this issue then?
Yes.
Do you remember that you specifically told us that you could not use Mr. Alexander's camera to take this video? Do you remember telling us that?
I don't remember saying I couldn't.
Do you remember that you said that it couldn't be done for whatever reason? You guys couldn't do it?
Objection, mischaracterizes her testimony.
Overruled.
No, I think I was talking about the timer.
Ma'am, do you remember, let's just take a look at Exhibit 167. Remember talking about this particular photograph and saying, I was trying to set up the camera so that we could take a video, but it didn't work because you didn't know how to do it. Do you remember telling us that?
Yes, I remember that.
So now you remember, right?
Yes. Well, you said couldn't. Doesn't mean I couldn't. I just couldn't figure it out. Doesn't mean I couldn't take a video if I didn't sit and try to figure it out. But we were in the mood and didn't want to sit and tinker with it.
What are you saying in terms of the camera? Did or you use Mr. Alexander's, did you attempt to use Mr. Alexander's camera to videotape the sexual activity? Yes or no?
Yes.
Remember just now you told me that you didn't? Or that you couldn't remember?
That I couldn't.
Used his camera.
I couldn't remember which camera we ultimately used.
So, but do you remember that previously in this hearing, in this trial, you told us that you could remember?
Could remember what?
What are we talking about again here? We're talking about videotaping the sexual activity in which camera is involved. Do you have any problem understanding that?
No.
So, do you remember on direct examination that you told us something different than what you're telling us now?
Objection, mischaracterizes her testimony, Judge.
Overruled. Meeting.
I'm just answering the questions to the best of my memory, so.
I'm not asking you if you're answering the questions to the best of your memory, am I?
No.
I'm asking you whether you have changed your story from testifying earlier to now. That's what I'm asking you.
The answer is no.
Well then, do you remember testifying that you and Mr. Alexander, when this photograph was taken, were attempting to use his camera to videotape the activity? Do you remember telling us that?
I don't remember specifically saying that, but that would be accurate.
And that's something that you didn't tell us previously now. You've now changed that from what you told us a couple of minutes ago, right?
Objection, mischaracterizes her testimony, Judge.
Overruled.
I don't think so. I think it's all consistent.
Alright.
You're just asking different questions.
Okay. And then, after doing that, there was a situation where you got up and you got your camera, right?
Yes.
And you say that this camera was used to videotape the activity, correct?
Correct.
So, where's the rope?
At this point, I guess it would be somewhere on the floor.
Why would it be on the floor if it was already on the floor to start with?
The part that was not used went on the floor to start with, I think.
Don't mean to be exploitive about this, but we'll start with this photograph here of Mr. Alexander, 166. Do you see where this is, ma'am?
Yes.
This is the corner of the bed. Do you see that?
Yes.
You said that your arms or hands were tied down here. Do you remember telling us that?
They were in that general area.
Sure. And if the rope is down on the ground, you take your hands out, that rope is still going to remain there, right?
No.
Well, let's take another view. 168. This is where your hands were, right?
Yes.
And this is where the rope was, right?
Yes.
It isn't there, is it?
Not anymore.
Well, you keep saying that anymore. It isn't there at all, is it?
It wasn't there when that photo was taken.
After this activity, you and Mr. Alexander, according to you, had something to eat, right?
Yes.
And after that, there was sort of a lull in the day's activities, right?
Yes.
Why didn't you just go home at that point? You said that part of the reason was just to have sex. That's been accomplished. Why not go home there? Why
Wasn't
stick
the
around?
only reason?
Pardon?
Because going there to have sex was not the only reason for going there.
What was the other reason?
To spend time together.
And so you guys are continuing to spend time together, right?
Yes.
And you want to spend time with somebody that you've described over and over as a bully, right?
Objection, Ms. Arias, your testimony. She's never said that once.
Sustained.
Judge, may we approach? Did you indicate at all during cross-examination and any part of direct examination that he was a bully?
Yes.
And so why is it that you want to spend time with somebody that you describe as a bully?
He wasn't just a bully. He was many good things also.
Or it could be that he wasn't ever a bully, right?
That's not the case. So, no.
It could be that that's just what you're saying, right?
Objection, argumentative.
Overruled.
That's how I felt.
And the fact that you felt bullied is your perception of what was going on, right?
Yes.
So, for example, in August of 2007, when he's banging his head up against the closet door and then sort of comes after you and grabs your wrist and hugs you, that's bullying, right?
I didn't consider that bullying.
So, but again, it's your perception as to what he's doing that constitutes your definition of what bullying is, correct?
Yes, when I feel bullied.
After that, you tell us something about going downstairs and you're looking at some CDs or something like that, correct?
Yes.
And with regard to your camera, where did you keep the camera?
My Olympus, the one we used.
I don't know which one it was. You're the one that was there. You had a camera, correct?
Yes, I had 2 cameras with me.
Okay. Which camera was used to attempt to videotape the sexual activity?
The Olympus.
And was it successful?
Yes, I knew how to use video on that camera.
Pardon?
Yes.
And did you guys view it afterwards?
Yes.
Did you delete it afterwards?
Yes.
Immediately?
Yes.
How about the photographs that were taken from his camera? Were they deleted immediately afterwards?
To my knowledge, we deleted them afterward, yes.
The way you say that, to my knowledge, it means that you're not sure, right?
I'm not sure because he did the deleting, I think.
So it could be that they weren't deleted right afterwards, right?
Could be.
And you wouldn't know because you weren't watching what he was doing, right? You were watching what he was doing but you weren't engaged in the transaction yourself, correct?
That's correct.
With regard to that camera and deleting pictures, this was the first exposure that you've had to that camera, right?
Yes.
You hadn't seen it before, right?
That's right.
And in fact, although you indicated to Detective Flores that you helped them buy this camera, right?
Yes.
You helped them buy it telephonically, right?
Yes.
And so the camera that he had before that day, before the sexual activity, you had never deleted any images from that camera, right?
Prior to June 4th, no.
And after the sexual activity, there was photographs that were taken during the activity, correct?
Yes.
And according to you, after the sexual activity is when he was involved in what you thought was deleting photographs, right?
I guess. I mean, I don't really recall at what point they were deleted. I just know they got deleted.
What you do know is that you didn't do the deleting, right?
I did some deleting on that phone that day with the shower pictures, so I don't.
I'm not asking about the shower pictures, am I?
No.
I'm
You just asked about
asking about-
deleting, so I answered.
I'm asking about, let's restrict ourselves to the sexual activity for right now, all right?
Yes.
Involving the sexual activity, you don't know whether or not he deleted those photographs, right?
Not 100% if he did or I did. I'm pretty sure he did.
But you don't know, right?
That's correct.
And up until that time, that after the sexual activity, you had not deleted any images from his camera, ever, right?
Up until that time, no.
Right. You went downstairs, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if the photos were deleted before or after, but we did go
I'm not
downstairs.
asking you when the phones were deleted, or the photos were deleted. I'm asking you after you were upstairs, and you just said that you, up to that point, you hadn't deleted anything. After that, you went downstairs, right?
Well, you make it sound like without deleting anything, we went downstairs. But I don't know if that was the case, if we deleted them before we went downstairs or afterward.
But you didn't do any of the deletion, right? You just said you don't know when he deleted them, right?
That's right.
So you don't know if they were deleted before you went downstairs or at some later time, right?
That's correct.
And so you then go downstairs because we don't know if the images were deleted yet, right?
That's correct.
Is that when you took your shower?
I don't know if I ate the banana first or if I took a shower first.
All right, but at some point, before or after the banana, you took a shower.
Yes.
And was he in the bathroom, Mr. Alexander, when you were taking your shower?
At one point, yes, and then afterward, no.
Okay. And that's the only shower that you took that day, correct?
I don't know. Because I have a lot of memory gaps that day. That's the only one I remember taking.
So now the memory gaps start, correct?
Well,
Is that
when
what
you
you're
talk in
saying?
terms of the whole day, you said that day. I can't
Well,
answer.
I'm asking that day after 1:45 in the afternoon, you said you took a shower, right?
I don't know what time it was, but we took a shower after sex. I
Right.
did.
Take a look at photograph number 165. Recognize that?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
It's my stuff down there.
Is it a picture of your rear end, right?
Yes.
And it does have a time on there, doesn't it?
Yes.
What's the time on there?
1:44 p.m.
So my question to you was, after 1:45 in the afternoon, did you take a shower?
Yes. After that point, yes.
Okay.
Not immediately after necessarily.
All right. And And you told us that it was perhaps before or after you ate the banana, right?
Yes.
And while you were taking a shower, Mr. Alexander was there for a little bit of time, and then he was somewhere else, right?
He was in the bathroom at first, and then he left.
And you took a shower in the same place where you placed his body after you killed him, right?
Yes.
And after you took the shower, you got dressed in the pants that you were wearing at the time that you killed him, right?
I believe so.
When you say you believe so, was there a costume change throughout this whole event?
Not that I recall.
And after the shower, where was he?
After my shower, he was downstairs in his office.
Okay, and then you went down there, right?
Yes, I did.
The only reason that you know he was downstairs is because you went down there, right?
Yes.
Where was your camera?
I don't know at that point if I had put it in the car or afterward or what. I don't know.
This was June 4th of 2008, right?
Yes.
And this was after 1:45 in the afternoon, right?
Yes.
Why would you put a camera in a very hot car in the Mesa area where temperatures can go over 105, 110 degrees?
I didn't
Outside.
say I did. I didn't say I did. I said I didn't remember.
No, you said that you don't remember, but you thought you put it in the car, right?
I said I don't remember if it was still in the house or in the car at that point.
All right. So at some point, you said that you also took your luggage out, right?
Yes.
And your luggage included toiletries and that sort of thing, right?
Yes, and clothing.
Right? So when did you take your items out to the car?
I don't remember the exact moment or sequence.
I'm not asking the exact moment. Give me an hour period.
I don't know.
Well, what is it, after 1:45?
It was after that.
Was it before 5:30?
Probably. I don't recall.
Well, the photographs in the shower at 5:30. Had you already taken your items downstairs?
I'm not sure. I think, but I'm not 100%.
Do you remember when you testified on direct examination regarding this issue?
Yes.
Remember that you told us that by the time the shower was taken, you had already put the luggage, those items in the car.
The luggage, yes. I'm not sure about the camera.
Okay, so the luggage did go into the car then, right?
Yes.
But didn't you also tell us that the other bag also went into the car before you were taking these photographs? Do you remember telling us that?
Yes.
How many bags did you have that day?
I had my backpack, my carry-on suitcase, my purse, and my camera case, and my laptop.
Okay, so your laptop, is that going out at the same time that your suitcase is going out or no?
No, because, well, I had the laptop in the office when I pulled the CDs out. I don't really remember. I know I had it at that point, but I don't remember when it went in the car.
Well, it was obviously before 5:30 though, right?
The laptop, I don't know, I guess.
Well, that's when he was in the shower at 5:30, right?
Yes.
Okay, and didn't you tell us on direct examination that by that time you had already taken all of your stuff down into the car? Do you remember telling us that then?
I remember saying the luggage and things, yes.
So you don't remember that you told us that the rest of the items were also taken down and put in the car?
Well, I don't know about the camera or the...
I'm not asking about the camera. I'm asking about all the other items. Because the camera, you've told me you don't know. And then we talked about the laptop, remember?
Yes.
And so I'm asking you, when did the other items go down? Let's keep the camera out of this equation. When did the other items go down into the car?
I don't know.
Why is it that you don't know, ma'am?
They're just details that I don't remember. I remember some things and like major things and not, I don't know. They're details.
Why is it that you don't remember the details today, but when you were talking about them within the last couple of weeks, you did remember them? Why is that? That's my point.
Well, I was uncertain about those too. I just was, obviously it went in the car at one point. I just don't know exactly which point.
But do you remember telling us last week that the luggage and the other items all went down into the car before 5:30? Do you remember telling us that?
Not that specifically.
And you don't remember telling us that the camera was included and that it also went down before 5:30. Do you remember telling us that at all?
I don't know.
Judge, I think give him
All
a
right,
talk
ladies
about-
and gentlemen, we're going to take the evening recess. Please be back in the designated area. We can start at 10:15 tomorrow. Is everyone available? All right, we'll see you then. Please remember the admonition, you are excused.
Please stand for the jury.
Record will show the jury has left the courtroom. Ms. Arias, you may step down. Counsel.
Judge, yesterday I neglected to move into evidence exhibit number 470. I know to do it in front of the jury, but that's the first thing I'm going to do tomorrow. It's one of the excerpts from the 48 hours, and it's actually excerpt number 15. So I'm going to move it in. It's already been played for the jury.
Is that the one that was mistakenly played?
No. I don't know if this, I don't know what it says. If you want, we can play it right now, but.
Why don't you put it in since the jury isn't present? We'll just make sure.
What's that? It's my 15 right here.
And you did play this before, right?
Yeah, I think, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's fine. That's right.
Yeah.
We don't need to replay it, Judge. I just want to know what it was. Now that I've got the note, that's fine.
You can move it into evidence tomorrow, and I will admit it without objection.
You said tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow, not today. All right, we're in recess. Thank you.